For more than 150 million years, long before Tyrannosaurus rex took its first heavy steps, giant predators ruled the planet. Across steaming Jurassic forests, wide floodplains, and dark coastal waters, waves of powerful hunters rose and fell, leaving only scattered fossils and broken bones as silent records of their reign. In this deep past, the world was not empty or quiet. Herds of plant-eating dinosaurs moved through their environments in great numbers. Towering sauropods swept their necks over the treetops. Armored stegosaurs carried plates and spikes like living fortresses. Duck-billed herds crowded the riverbanks, stripping leaves and reeds in huge, restless groups. Yet in the shadows of these peaceful giants, other shapes waited and watched. Some were lighter and faster than the prey they followed. Others relied on thick necks, massive skulls, and long, slicing teeth. All were built to turn living muscle into meat. These were predators that hunted many millions of years before T-Rex. In the late Jurassic, Allosaurus stalked sauropods and stegosaurs, using a lighter body and strong legs to strike and move away again. In later Cretaceous landscapes, blade-toothed giants such as Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus dominated southern continents. Their skulls stretched as long as a person is tall, filled with serrated teeth, shaped less like spikes and more like knives. Scientists have found evidence showing that these teeth were ideal for opening huge wounds and letting prey bleed out, rather than crushing bone in the way T-Rex would do much later. The contrast between plant eaters and hunters defined every ancient scene. A line of sauropods crossing a floodplain might look calm from a distance, but somewhere nearby, a pack of medium-sized carnivores could be slipping through the trees. A herd of duckbills drinking at a lake might seem safe, while just beneath the surface, a semi-aquatic killer waited, its body half held up by water, its jaws ready to snap shut on any leg that moved too close. In these worlds, safety was always temporary. Speed, surprise, and incredible strength decided which animals survived the day. This episode explores those earlier apex hunters, the most dangerous giant predators that came before T-Rex, and in many regions, never met it at all. Each one developed special abilities that turned it into one of the most efficient killing machines of its time. Some had blade-like skulls and long, narrow snouts made for slashing. Others carried deep chests and thick tails for short bursts of power. Some may even have hunted in coordinated groups, using their numbers to bring down prey far larger than a single animal could manage alone. What did these designs reveal about their environments, and how did changing climates clear the way for tyrannosaurs later on? To answer these questions, the story will move predator by predator, like a series of case studies. For each hunter, the journey will begin with its time and setting, then move through its body design, its main weapons, and the way it likely performed in real hunts. Scientists have gathered evidence from bite marks, healed injuries, trackways, and CT-scanned skulls, all showing how these animals lived and killed. Step by step, their abilities will be compared, until a final picture emerges of which monsters truly ruled the Earth before the so-called king arrived. Long before Tyrannosaurus rex claimed its crown, the planet had already passed through an age of giants. For many millions of years, other predators held the top position, filling their environments with the sounds of pursuit, impact, and tearing flesh. This episode enters that hidden dynasty, where the most dangerous dinosaurs were not tyrannosaurs at all, but earlier killers that ruled, vanished, and left only scattered bones behind. This chapter is part of a broader exploration of the most dangerous dinosaurs in Earth's history. Across the series, each predator is treated as a case study in power. Its skeleton, its weapons, and its hunting style are examined in detail. Here, the focus turns specifically to apex hunters that dominated long before tyrannosaurs rose to power, asking a simple question: what does it really mean to be the deadliest thing alive in a given time and place? To answer that, each featured predator will be approached through its special abilities. Some relied on speed, with long, strong legs built for sudden bursts and relentless chases. Others used overwhelming bite force or slashing power, with teeth shaped like knives that could open deep wounds and bleed giant herbivores dry. Still, others gained an advantage through aquatic mastery or possible pack tactics, turning rivers, coastlines, and group coordination into lethal tools. Each ability will be measured against the challenges of its environment. The main lineages in this story form a shifting cast of super predators. Allosaurids, such as Allosaurus, dominated the late Jurassic, attacking sauropods and stegosaurs with light but powerful skulls and recurved teeth. Later, Carcharodontosaurids like Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus emerged in South America and Africa, with skulls longer than a human is tall and blade-edged teeth that resemble those of a great white shark. Spinosaurids, including Spinosaurus, moved toward the water with long crocodile-like jaws and dense bones that may have helped them hunt giant fish in deep channels. Alongside these giants were early tyrannosauroids and other large hunters that briefly held the top spot in their own regions. Some were smaller but fast, relying on agility and sharp senses rather than sheer mass. Scientists have identified trackways and fragmentary fossils that hint at regional dynasties of predators, each adapted to a particular mix of climate, prey, and competition. Which strategies gave them the edge, and which left them vulnerable when conditions shifted? Throughout this episode, every claim about strength, speed, or killing power is grounded in science. Fossils provide the raw data: tooth marks on bones, healed injuries, pathologies, and the exact shapes of skulls and claws. Biomechanical modeling then tests how hard a jaw could bite, how far a neck could swing, or how fast a limb could move. Modern animal comparisons add another layer, with lions, crocodiles, sharks, and large birds offering living examples of similar designs. Together, this evidence shows how these ancient hunters may have moved, sensed, and killed. The narrative will progress through time, revealing different ways to be an apex predator. It will move from Jurassic giants like Allosaurus to Cretaceous blade-toothed killers such as Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, and finally to strange specialists like Spinosaurus, whose semi-aquatic lifestyle challenged the very idea of what a land predator could be. With each step, the dynasty grows more complex, setting the stage for the moment when tyrannosaurs finally enter a world already shaped by killers that came before them. But before Tyrannosaurus stepped into this deadly arena, another hunter had already claimed the throne. In the late Jurassic, long before the age of T-Rex, a different kind of giant predator shaped the rules of the hunt. Its name was Allosaurus. Allosaurus lived around 155 to 145 million years ago in a world crowded with long-necked sauropods and heavily armed stegosaurs. The continents were arranged differently, the climate was warm, and vast floodplains stretched across what is now Western North America and parts of Europe. In this environment, Allosaurus rose to become one of the most powerful meat-eating dinosaurs of its time, a dominant predator that ruled many millions of years before the first tyrannosaurs became true apex hunters. Its name, Allosaurus, comes from Greek and means different lizard. At first, that difference referred to unusual vertebrae and skull bones that did not match other known dinosaurs. The vertebrae were light and full of air spaces, and the skull was built from strong but relatively thin bones, with large openings that reduced weight. Over time, scientists have realized that this different design was not just a curiosity. It was a specialized framework for a fast, slicing hunter. Fossils of Allosaurus are among the most common large predator remains in the famous Morrison Formation of North America. Entire skeletons, scattered bones, and even fossils of different age groups have been uncovered. This rich record has played an important role in shaping the modern picture of Jurassic ecosystems. Because Allosaurus is so well known, it serves as a model for how giant predators interacted with the herds of sauropods like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus. and with armored plant eaters such as Stegosaurus that shared the same environment. There is evidence showing that Allosaurus did not simply scavenge the dead. Bite marks on sauropod bones match its recurved, serrated teeth, and some of those bones show signs of healing. This suggests repeated attacks on living, struggling prey. Scientists have also found Allosaurus skeletons with broken ribs, damaged skull bones, and fused injuries that healed over time, hinting at violent clashes with massive victims or with rivals of the same species. What kind of predator survives blows from a tail the size of a tree trunk? The head of Allosaurus was long but relatively light, with a flexible joint system that may have allowed quick, chopping strikes rather than a single crushing bite. Its teeth were sharp and backward curving, ideal for slicing flesh and pulling away large chunks from a struggling animal. Short but muscular arms ended in 3 strong claws, which may have helped grip prey or rake open wounds. Taken together, this different anatomy formed a deadly toolkit that some researchers consider one of the most efficient killing designs of the Jurassic. As the story continues, Allosaurus will stand as the first great case study in how giant predators adapted their skulls, teeth, and entire bodies to rule their worlds, setting a pattern that later hunters would follow and sometimes challenge. To understand that world Allosaurus ruled, the scene must shift away from the skull and back out to the landscape itself. Many millions of years ago, during the late Jurassic, the region that is now Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming formed a broad, low basin of river-fed floodplains, shallow lakes, and muddy channels. Warm, seasonal weather brought wet periods of heavy rain followed by drier months, turning the ground into a patchwork of green valleys and dusty, cracking riverbanks. Conifer forests rose along slightly higher ground, their tall trunks casting long shadows over fern-filled clearings. Between these stands of trees lay open plains covered with horsetails, cycads, and low shrubs, broken by winding streams that overflowed during floods. This environment did not yet have flowering plants or grass, but it still supported huge amounts of plant growth, enough to feed some of the largest dinosaurs that ever lived. Across these floodplains moved an extraordinary community of animals. Immense sauropods, such as Diplodocus and Apatosaurus, traveled in groups, their long necks sweeping through conifer branches, while their heavy feet sank into the wet soil. Nearby, Stegosaurus browsed more slowly, its small head low to the ground, while tall plates and sharp tail spikes rose above the ferns. Smaller ornithopods, quick two-legged plant eaters, darted between the legs of giants, feeding on softer vegetation and fleeing at the slightest sign of danger. Below this towering world, early mammals hid in burrows and under roots, active mostly at night to avoid the heavy footsteps of dinosaurs. Turtles slid through quiet ponds, while crocodile relatives waited motionless at the edges of channels, ready to lunge at fish or any animal that came to drink. Above, pterosaurs with long wings glided over the rivers, watching the herds from the air and searching for carcasses or small prey. Scientists have uncovered fossils from all of these groups in the same rock formations, evidence showing that they shared one connected ecosystem. At the top of this complex community stood Allosaurus. It was the primary large apex predator in these habitats, and its presence played an important role in shaping how other dinosaurs lived. Herding behavior in sauropods, the defensive tail swings of Stegosaurus, and even the evolution of heavy armor and gigantic body size can be seen as responses to constant pressure from hunters like Allosaurus. This predator was not just another animal in the environment. It was a driving force. Fossil bone beds provide a dramatic glimpse of how that force operated. In several late Jurassic sites, scientists have found piles of sauropod bones surrounded by the shed teeth and bite marks of Allosaurus. Some skeletons show repeated gouges along ribs and vertebrae, with overlapping marks from different individuals. These scenes suggest that when a giant sauropod died, its carcass became a feeding center, drawing in multiple Allosaurus along with smaller scavengers, crocodile relatives, and pterosaurs landing to pick at exposed flesh. Imagine a misty valley at dawn, with diplodocus herds moving slowly through the ferns while turtles slip into quiet pools and pterosaurs circle overhead. The air seems peaceful, but the tension is constant. Somewhere at the edge of the conifer forest, half hidden among trunks and shadows, an Allosaurus watches in silence. Its strong legs are ready to move, and its slicing teeth wait for the moment a young or weakened animal steps too far from the safety of the group. In this Jurassic killing ground, even calm mornings could turn deadly in an instant, setting the stage for the hunting strategies that will be explored next. From the shadows of that forest, the shape of Allosaurus begins to resolve into more than just a lurking presence. This predator was not only deadly because of its teeth and claws, but because its entire body was built as a living weapon. Many millions of years before Tyrannosaurus appeared, this Jurassic hunter had already perfected a very different blueprint for killing giants. Typical large individuals of Allosaurus reached around 8 to 9 meters in length, with some rare specimens possibly stretching beyond 10 meters from snout to tail. Standing roughly 3 meters high at the hip, it carried a deep, muscular torso that housed strong leg muscles and powerful breathing systems. In the dense conifer forests and open floodplains of its environment, this size allowed it to face sauropods and stegosaurs that were many times heavier than itself. Yet, despite its impressive dimensions, Allosaurus was relatively lightly built compared with the massive tyrannosaurs that would come later. Its hips were narrower, and many of its bones were more gracile, with large air spaces inside. Scientists have found fossils showing that its skeleton was strengthened by internal struts, creating a frame that was both strong and surprisingly light. This combination suggests a predator that balanced power with agility, trading some crushing force for speed and maneuverability. The hind limbs of Allosaurus were long and muscular, designed for striding across Jurassic floodplains and for short, explosive bursts of speed. Its feet were broad and stable, helping it grip the ground as it lunged or turned. Behind them, a long, stiffened tail stretched out as a counterweight, allowing the dinosaur to swing its body and pivot quickly during an attack. In a world filled with enormous prey, the ability to change direction in an instant may have played an important role in bringing down panicked, charging victims. At the front of this body plan sat a proportionally large head on a flexible OS-shaped neck. The skull was deep, but not overly heavy, with large openings that reduced weight while still supporting strong jaw muscles and slicing teeth. Evidence showing that the neck vertebrae allowed rapid up and down movement has led many scientists to propose a powerful hatchet motion, driving the upper jaws down into flesh. Working with this, the relatively strong forelimbs, tipped with large curved claws, formed a second set of weapons for gripping, slashing, or pulling. Allosaurus, then, was not just a mouth on legs. It was a coordinated system. From its center of mass positioned over the hips, to the length of its legs, to the balance provided by its tail, every part of its body appears tuned for repeated high-risk attacks on animals far larger than itself. But how did such a lightly built killer actually use this design when the moment of impact finally came? And what happened when bone and muscle met those slicing jaws? At the center of that impact stood the head of Allosaurus, a weapon system in its own right. Its skull in the largest adults stretched close to 80 or even 90 centimeters from snout to back, nearly the length of a small table. Yet it was not a solid block of bone. Large openings honeycombed the skull, making it light, while strong ridges and struts formed a framework that could handle the pull of powerful jaw and neck muscles during violent attacks. This combination of lightness and strength turned the skull into one of the most efficient killing tools of the late Jurassic. The bones around the eyes and along the top of the muzzle were reinforced, helping to brace the head when when the jaws slammed shut on struggling prey. Scientists have studied these bones in detail and found evidence showing that the skull could flex slightly under stress, spreading forces instead of shattering. In an environment filled with giant sauropods and heavily armed stegosaurs, this flexible strength played an important role in keeping the predator's head intact. Inside that framework sat the true cutting edge of Allosaurus, its teeth. Each jaw carried dozens of laterally compressed, blade-like teeth, narrow from side to side, but long from base to tip. The front and back edges were lined with serrations, like the teeth of a saw, ideal for slicing through flesh rather than crushing bone. Many fossils preserve replacement teeth growing beneath the active row, showing that damaged or lost teeth were continually replaced throughout its life, keeping the mouth ready for the next hunt. The joints and surfaces along the back of the skull and the lower jaw show broad areas where muscles once anchored. These attachment zones indicate strong but relatively fast-moving jaws, not the slow bone-crushing bite seen in later tyrannosaurs. Instead of relying on a single devastating clamp, Allosaurus appears to have delivered rapid, repeated strikes, opening and closing its jaws quickly to carve multiple wounds. In close quarters around massive herbivores, speed could be as important as raw force. Supporting these attacks were the forelimbs. Though shorter than the legs, they were robust, with strong shoulder bones and thick upper arms. Each hand carried 3 fingers tipped with large curved claws. These claws could grip the hide of a sauropod, rake along the flanks of a stegosaur, or anchor the predator's body as the head and jaws tore away flesh. In many reconstructions, the arms act almost like grappling hooks, helping the animal hold its place on a thrashing victim. Some of the most debated evidence concerns how all these parts work together during the moment of impact. One controversial idea suggests a hatchet-style bite, where Allosaurus used its neck muscles to drive the open jaws downward like an axe, letting the serrated teeth slice deeply as the head pulled back. Could this technique explain certain damage patterns on Jurassic bones? And how did it compare with the simpler crushing bite of tyrannosaurs that came many millions of years later? The next section examines what experiments and digital models reveal about this deadly motion. Digital models and mechanical tests have given a clearer picture of what that motion could actually do. Scientists have created simulations of the Allosaurus skull and neck and compared them with those of Tyrannosaurus rex. The results provide evidence showing that Allosaurus had a much lower bite force than the giant predator that came later. Its jaws alone did not crush bone in the same way, but they did not need to. The real weapon was the entire head and neck acting together. In these studies, the neck vertebrae and muscle attachment areas stand out as especially strong. When reconstructed with realistic muscles, the neck appears capable of driving the skull downward in fast, chopping blows. Instead of clamping and holding like a crocodile, Allosaurus likely struck quickly, let its own body weight add power, then tore back. This style of attack turned a modest bite force into a deadly cutting system. The skull, light but reinforced by many strong bones and air spaces, was built to swing, not simply to squeeze. This is the basis of the proposed hatchet bite mechanism. The head came down like a falling axe, the upper teeth hit first, and the serrated edges sliced into flesh. Then the animal pulled its head and neck backward, enlarging the wound and ripping out chunks of muscle. Repeated again and again, this motion could strip tissue from a sauropod's flank or open long, bleeding gashes along the neck and tail. Instead of one crushing bite that ended the struggle immediately, it was a series of rapid, high-impact cuts that slowly removed strength from the victim. In some ways, this strategy resembles the way big cats attack large prey today. Lions and tigers often make multiple bites and claw wounds, hanging on and wearing down animals much larger than themselves. Other modern predators, such as wild dogs or wolves, harass and weaken their targets over time rather than depending on a single killing blow. Allosaurus seems to belong in this group of repeated strike hunters. Its teeth were long and blade-like, better for slicing soft tissue than shattering hard bone, and this matched the vulnerable areas on the huge plant-eating dinosaurs it faced. Speed and agility also played an important role in this hunting style. For its size, Allosaurus had relatively long legs and a balanced, tail-supported body that allowed quick turns. In the crowded environments of the late Jurassic, where herds of sauropods and stegosaurs moved through floodplains, such maneuverability was vital. The predator could dodge swinging tails, step around crashing feet, and angle its body toward the neck, flanks, and base of the tail, where the skin and muscles were easier to cut. A direct hit from a sauropod's limb could be fatal, so every attack carried serious risk. Taken together, these traits made Allosaurus one of the most dangerous Jurassic predators, not through brute force alone, but through a calculated high-risk strategy aimed at giants. It traded the security of a single overpowering bite for the flexibility of many targeted wounds, using speed, precision, and powerful neck muscles to turn each opening into a deadly advantage. But was Allosaurus hunting alone? Or did several individuals work together to bring down the biggest prey of all? The next section explores the controversial evidence hidden in bone beds and healed scars. The clues to that question are not written in ancient stories, but carved directly into bone. For millions of years, the bodies of Allosaurus and its prey lay buried in mud and sand, and those buried remains still carry scars from violent encounters. These marks turn silent skeletons into records of attack, struggle, and survival. Many large plant-eating dinosaurs from the late Jurassic show dramatic injuries. Sauropod ribs and tailbones have deep gouges that match the curved shape, size, and spacing of Allosaurus teeth. Some vertebrae from giant long-necked dinosaurs carry long parallel scrapes where powerful jaws raked across the surface, shaving off bone as they tore away flesh. In other cases, stegosaurs show puncture marks in their plates and hips, with holes that fit the narrow, blade-like teeth of this predator. Scientists have used these patterns as evidence, showing that Allosaurus repeatedly struck at the flanks, tails, and backs of huge herbivores, biting again and again until blood loss and shock brought them down. These wounds are not only found on prey. Allosaurus itself often died bearing the marks of a brutal life. Skulls and neck bones frequently show healed bite marks, with crushed areas that later grew smooth new bone. In some specimens, the upper jaw has deep pits and grooves that line up closely with Allosaurus teeth, suggesting face biting during fights. This kind of injury pattern is one of the most important signals that intraspecific combat played an important role in their behavior. Individuals were not just hunters of other dinosaurs, they were also dangerous rivals to each other. The picture becomes even more intense when entire bone beds are examined. In several late Jurassic sites, multiple Allosaurus skeletons lie mixed with the remains of large sauropods and stegosaurs. Some scientists see in this a hint of group feeding, with several predators gathering around a single massive carcass. Others argue for loose, opportunistic aggregations, where the smell of blood drew in solitary hunters from across the environment. Either way, it suggests that feeding events could turn into chaotic scenes, with snapping jaws, slashing tails, and constant risk of injury from both prey and competitors. Then comes an unexpected line of evidence: fossilized dung. In theropod coprolites from similar ecosystems, scientists have found sharp bone fragments mixed with mineralized waste. These fossils show that at least some large predators could bite through and swallow pieces of bone, then pass them through the digestive system. Allosaurus teeth were built more for slicing than crushing, but even small fragments taken with flesh would have added calcium and phosphorus to its diet, helping maintain strong bones and powerful muscles. Taken together, These traces reveal Allosaurus as a relentless hunter and scavenger, living in a dangerous world shaped by constant conflict. Every hunt meant the chance of being kicked, stabbed, or bitten. Every carcass could become a battlefield. In the next section, the focus shifts from scars and stone to the wider Jurassic landscape that produced such a risky way of life, and how this earlier dynasty of killers set the stage for the rise of later giants. That dangerous world did not only shape bodies, it also shaped behavior. For Allosaurus, the top predator of the late Jurassic, the question is simple but haunting. Did this blade-toothed hunter stalk the forests as a lone killer? Or did shadows move with it through the trees? Scientists have gathered clues from quarries where multiple Allosaurus fossils lie mixed with the bones of giant sauropods. At first glance, such graveyards seem to show packs dying together around huge carcasses. There is evidence showing that different age groups were present at the same sites, from half-grown hunters to large adults. Yet these scenes might record accidents at waterholes or repeated visits to the same killing ground over many thousands of years, rather than true cooperative hunting. Because of this, many scientists are cautious. Allosaurus had a relatively light, flexible skull, long arms with strong claws, and sharp, laterally compressed teeth that sliced rather than crushed. These features fit both a solitary ambush hunter and a loose group predator. Without clear signs of coordinated attack, such as healed bite marks on each other that match pack disputes in modern carnivores, the social life of this dinosaur remains uncertain. Possible hunting scenes, however, can be built from its anatomy and environment. A single Allosaurus might have waited in broken woodland near a riverbank, using low hills and conifer trunks as cover. When a young sauropod or a distracted stegosaur passed close, it could rush forward with powerful leg muscles, slash with its jaws and claws, then pull back before the prey's counterattack. One or two deep wounds from those cutting teeth could start blood loss that ended the struggle minutes or hours later. Another scenario imagines several Allosaurus circling a herd of sauropods. Instead of a tight, coordinated pack, they might have formed a shifting ring, each individual darting in to strike at the flanks or tails, then retreating while another attacker moved in. Such harassment would tire the herbivores, isolate the weakest, and reduce the chance that any one predator would be crushed by a swinging tail or a stamping foot. In a world filled with enormous plant eaters, minimizing contact with those massive feet and heavy bones played an important role in survival. The risks were extreme. A single misjudged charge could mean shattered ribs, broken legs, or fatal internal bleeding. Yet the rewards were just as great. Bringing down even part of a sauropod meant tons of meat. Whether alone or in shifting groups, Allosaurus likely followed herds across wide floodplains, tracking droughts, injuries, and seasonal shortages that made prey more vulnerable. As a top predator, it probably commanded large territories, with individuals roaming many kilometers in search of weakness. This strategy of slashing, retreating, and bleeding prey over time belonged to an earlier dynasty of killers. In later ages, other giants would rise with skulls less like saws and more like guillotines, trading repeated slicing attacks for a single, crushing bite. How did that change the balance between hunter and hunted? And what did it mean for the final kings of the dinosaur world? For many millions of years, that earlier dynasty was led by hunters built on the Allosaurus blueprint. Light for their size, fast over short distances, and armed with rows of recurved, serrated teeth, they turned speed and precision into deadly weapons. Allosaurus relied on a strong neck and flexible jaws to drive its saw-like teeth into flesh, then pull back, opening long, bleeding wounds instead of crushing bone in a single blow. Fossils show healed ribs, bitten tailbones, and deep scratches on giant sauropods from the late Jurassic, evidence showing that Allosaurus regularly attacked prey far larger than itself. Its bird-like, air-filled skeleton reduced weight, while long, muscular legs allowed quick lunges and sidesteps around swinging tails and spiked backs. This predator often survived broken ribs and torn bones, suggesting that risky close-quarters battles played an important role in its life. It was a specialist in hit-and-run violence, but that basic body plan did not remain frozen in time. Over millions of years, evolution stretched the Allosaurus design into even more extreme shapes. Skulls became longer and deeper, neck muscles more powerful, and the teeth themselves changed from narrow saw blades into broad, razor-edged knives. Out of this transformation emerged a new lineage of giants, the Carcharodontosaurids. Named after the great white shark, Carcharodon, these shark-toothed lizards carried some of the most fearsome mouth weapons ever grown by land-dwelling dinosaurs. Their teeth were tall, laterally compressed and finely serrated, designed to slice through muscle in great slabs rather than puncture and hold. Scientists have compared their skulls to living meat cleavers, with long snouts, strong jaw joints, and reinforced bones that could withstand the shock of biting into massive prey. These predators spread across several continents during the early and mid-Cretaceous, from Africa and Europe to Asia and South America. In many of those environments, Carcharodontosaurids ruled at the very top of the food chain long before tyrannosaurs arrived. Some species reached or even exceeded Tyrannosaurus rex in length, though with lighter frames and less bone-crushing bites. Instead of smashing skeletons, they turned entire ecosystems into arenas of blood loss and exhaustion, where one well-placed slice could doom a giant herbivore over minutes or hours. What did it mean to live in a world where the dominant killer was not a compact, muscular jaw crusher, but a long-skulled blade user? In the southern continents, that question is answered by one of the most impressive Carcharodontosaurids ever found, Giganotosaurus. Its name, giant southern lizard, hints at its size and power, but the fossils reveal even more. This predator stalked Cretaceous South American plains, where some of the largest land animals in history, the titanosaurs, grazed in herds. With Giganotosaurus, the story shifts in both tone and landscape, from the humid Jurassic floodplains of North America to vast Cretaceous river systems and open plains in the south. In that different environment, under a different sky, blade-toothed giants and colossal plant eaters met in confrontations that pushed the Allosaurus blueprint to its absolute limit. How did this giant hunt, and how did its shark-like teeth shape the fate of the giants around it? In that southern world, the Allosaurus design reached its most extreme form in a predator that pushed size, speed, and cutting power to terrifying new levels. Long before Tyrannosaurus rex appeared in North America, another giant stalked the floodplains of what is now Patagonia. Its name was Giganotosaurus carolini, and it was one of the most massive land hunters that has ever lived. Giganotosaurus lived around 98 to 97 million years ago, in the mid-Cretaceous period, many millions of years before T-Rex evolved. The environment it ruled was warm, humid, and rich in rivers and lowland forests, with herds of gigantic plant-eating dinosaurs moving across broad plains. Into this landscape stepped a predator whose skull alone could reach nearly 2 meters, lined with long serrated teeth shaped more like blades than spikes. The name Giganotosaurus comes from Greek words meaning giant southern lizard, a direct reference to both its enormous size and its home in the southern hemisphere. The species name, Carolinii, honors Ruben Carolini, the Patagonian fossil hunter who first discovered its bones in the early 1990s. That discovery played an important role in shifting scientific attention to South America, revealing that this continent held its own dynasty of apex predators, separate from the tyrannosaurs of the north. Fossils suggest that an adult Giganotosaurus could reach about 12 to 13 meters in length. That means it may have rivaled or even slightly exceeded Tyrannosaurus rex in total length, though its body was built differently. Instead of the deep, massively muscled frame of a tyrannosaur, this predator had a somewhat lighter, more elongated build, with a long tail and powerful hind limbs that hint at a surprisingly fast, striding walk. Scientists have used limb proportions and bone strength to estimate that it could likely move quickly enough to track large prey across open ground. The skull of Giganotosaurus was narrow and long, with strong jaws but not the bone-crushing design seen in T-Rex. Its teeth were thin, laterally compressed, and finely serrated, ideal for slicing deep into flesh and causing heavy blood loss. There is evidence showing that related Carcharodontosaurid dinosaurs used repeated slashing bites rather than a single crushing attack. This suggests that Giganotosaurus may have focused on weakening huge victims with multiple wounds, turning their own size and blood volume against them. In Patagonia, those victims were some of the largest animals that ever walked the earth. Colossal titanosaurs, including giants like Argentinosaurus, shared the same environment. Imagine a predator, more than 12 meters long, stalking prey that could stretch over 30 meters and weigh many tens of tons. How does a hunter, even one this large, bring down a living mountain of muscle and bone? Did Giganotosaurus attack in groups, or did it rely on ambush and relentless pursuit across the floodplain? Scientists have only fragments of direct interaction, but the scale alone promises confrontations unlike anything seen in later ecosystems. In the next section, the focus turns to those titanosaurs themselves, and to the deadly dance between Giganotosaurus and the southern giants it was built to test. Many millions of years ago, long before tyrannosaurs ruled the northern continents, the southern lands of Patagonia formed an arena built for giants. This was the mid-Cretaceous, roughly 100 to 95 million years in the past, and the world that surrounded Giganotosaurus was as harsh as it was vast. The region that is now southern Argentina lay closer to the South Pole than today, but global temperatures were higher, creating a warm, seasonally dry environment. Open woodlands stretched between wide river systems, with patches of conifer and fern forests breaking up broad, dusty floodplains. During wet seasons, rivers overflowed and spread muddy channels across the lowlands. In drier times, the same plains baked under the sun, forcing animals to move long distances in search of food and water. In this setting, the plant-eating dinosaurs were not small or delicate. They were gigantic. Among them marched Argentinosaurus and other enormous titanosaurs, some of the heaviest land animals that ever lived. Their long necks swept above the tree line, stripping leaves and branches that seemed high to smaller dinosaurs. Around them moved other sauropods of different sizes, along with medium-sized ornithopods that grazed on lower plants and shrubs. The community also included armored dinosaurs with bony plates and tail weapons, forming walking fortresses on the ground. Above and between them, early birds flapped and glided, while small mammals hid in burrows or under vegetation, active mostly at night. In the waterways, crocodile-like reptiles waded in the shallows, ready to snap at anything that came to drink. Fossils from Patagonia have given scientists a detailed picture of this environment, with bones, trackways, and even preserved eggs, showing that it was one of the most crowded giant herbivore ecosystems ever discovered. At the very top of this living pyramid stood Giganotosaurus. It was the apex land predator, a blade-toothed hunter built to test the defenses of the largest herbivores. Its long, deep skull held strong jaws lined with serrated teeth designed to slice flesh rather than crush bone. Evidence showing that its teeth were narrow and sharp suggests that it attacked with repeated slashing bites, causing massive blood loss in prey that might weigh many times its own mass. In such a landscape, Giganotosaurus likely needed a huge home range. Food was abundant, but it was spread out over great distances as herds of titanosaurs wandered between feeding grounds and river corridors. To track these moving giants, a predator had to endure long walks, conserve energy, and follow scent trails or visual signs across the floodplain. Scientists have proposed that this constant movement played an important role in shaping the body of Giganotosaurus, favoring a lighter, more elongated build compared with the stockier tyrannosaurs of the north. The scale of this world is difficult to imagine. Even tall trees could seem small beside the bodies of sauropods, and a hunting Giganotosaurus, huge on its own, became just one moving piece among many titans. What did a single attack look like in such a setting? In the next section, the focus narrows to the titanosaurs themselves and the brutal encounters written into their damaged bones. In such a landscape of giants, the shape of a hunter's body became a weapon in itself. Giganotosaurus was not just big, it was long, low, and built to move with deadly purpose among the towering sauropods that filled its environment. Its proportions tell a story of reach, balance, and control in a world where a single misstep beside a titanic prey animal could be fatal. The skull of Giganotosaurus was one of the most striking parts of its design. It stretched long and narrow compared with the deeper, blockier head of Tyrannosaurus rex and rested on a strong, muscular neck. This arrangement created a sweeping arc of jaws and teeth that could reach far forward, allowing the predator to strike from a distance at flanks, tails, and necks. Scientists have studied the attachment points on the neck vertebrae, finding evidence showing that strong muscles supported this long blade-like skull during violent sideways movements. Behind the head, the torso of Giganotosaurus was deep but not overly bulky. The ribs and vertebrae suggest a chest that could house powerful lungs and strong muscles. Yet the overall skeleton appears slightly lighter than that of a similar-sized tyrannosaur. Instead of a compact, heavily built body made for bone-crushing bites, this dinosaur carried a more elongated frame. It seems to have traded some raw crushing power for reach, agility, and the ability to reposition itself around massive prey. Its hind limbs continued this theme. The thigh and shin bones were large and strong, yet their proportions indicate long, ground-covering strides rather than short bursts of speed. With each step, a great lever of muscle and bone pushed the animal forward, while a long, heavy tail stretched out behind as a counterbalance. This tail helped keep the center of gravity low and stable, allowing the predator to turn and adjust as huge herbivores shifted or swung their own powerful bodies in defense. Was Giganotosaurus a sprinter like some smaller predators? The fossils suggest something different, a hunter capable of moderate speeds and steady pursuit over open terrain. Closer to the chest, the arms of Giganotosaurus were relatively small but still functional. They were not as reduced as those of some later carnivorous dinosaurs, and their joints and claws indicate they could grasp or steady struggling prey at close range. Even if the jaws did most of the killing, these forelimbs still played an important role in controlling position during a dangerous attack. Taken together, every part of Giganotosaurus, from skull length to tail tip, appears tuned for fighting prey that were themselves giants. Its long body, balanced posture, and slicing teeth formed a system designed to inflict repeated deep wounds on animals that might take many attacks to bring down. In the next section, the focus turns to how this design translated into movement during the hunt, and how such a predator may have approached, harassed, and finally exhausted the titanosaurs that shared its world many millions of years ago. That system of repeated deep wounds began with a single, terrifying structure, the skull. In Giganotosaurus, this was not just a head at the end of a long neck. It was a purpose-built cutting weapon that defined how the animal attacked, how it fed, and how it dominated its environment many millions of years ago. The skull of Giganotosaurus was one of the most impressive among land predators. In the largest individuals, it stretched to around 1.6 meters in length, rivaling or exceeding the skulls of Tyrannosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus. Despite this size, it was not a solid block of bone. Large openings, called fenestrae, filled much of the space between the strong supporting bones. These hollows reduced weight while still allowing the skull to resist powerful twisting forces during a struggle with a giant sauropod. Scientists have found that this pattern of light but reinforced construction played an important role in letting such a massive head move quickly enough to strike. Inside this frame sat the true weapons, the teeth. Each tooth was laterally compressed with a thin, blade-like profile and fine serrations along the edges. Instead of being thick and rounded for crushing, they resembled the cutting blades of a great white shark, optimized for slicing through thick muscle and tough hide. When the jaws snapped shut and then pulled back, these teeth could carve long, open wounds rather than simply puncturing the flesh. Fossils from related Carcharodontosaurid dinosaurs preserve tooth marks that match this slicing style, providing evidence showing that these predators were specialists in removing large strips of meat. The arrangement of muscle attachment sites on the skull and lower jaw adds another layer to the picture. Broad surfaces at the back of the skull and along the jaw indicate large, strong muscles capable of closing the mouth with significant force. However, the overall structure suggests that Giganotosaurus did not reach the extreme bone-crushing bite of T-Rex. Instead, its jaws favored a wide, sweeping closure that brought many teeth into contact at once. This design supported rapid, slashing bites rather than slow, crushing pressure. What does this say about its hunting style? The long snout and extended tooth row meant that, with a sideways swing of the head, Giganotosaurus could rake an enormous area of flesh along the flanks or necks of giant sauropods. A single pass might open a wound stretching several meters, cutting through skin, muscle, and blood vessels while leaving most of the heavier bones intact. Repeated attacks of this kind would weaken even the largest prey through blood loss and shock, turning the battlefield into a place where endurance mattered as much as strength. In this way, the skull of Giganotosaurus was less a hammer and more a sword. It was designed to open the body rather than crush it, to let time, blood loss, and fear finish what the first strike began. But how did such a blade-armed hunter bring that weapon to bear against moving, panicked giants? And what did the chase itself look like on those ancient floodplains? On the broad, green floodplains of ancient South America, the blade-headed hunter finally moved from threat to action. Herds of sauropods stirred the ground with every step, peaceful giants that towered over the landscape. But among them walked something far more precise and deadly. Giganotosaurus did not need to crush bones in a single dramatic bite. It only needed to make its victims bleed. Biomechanical studies of its skull and jaws have given scientists important clues about how this predator killed. Computer models and comparisons with living animals suggest that its bite was strong, but not record-breaking for its size, far below the crushing power estimated for Tyrannosaurus rex. The long, narrow jaws and relatively slender lower jawbones match this picture. Instead of a compact, bone-smashing engine, the head of Giganotosaurus functioned as a fast, slashing weapon that relied on speed, reach, and those blade-like teeth. In this light, a typical hunt begins long before the first bite. Giganotosaurus likely shadowed sauropod herds at a distance, using low rises, scattered trees, and the dust of many feet as cover. Among the healthy adults, it searched for weakness, a limping leg, a juvenile straying too far from the center, or an older animal struggling to keep pace. When the moment came, the predator surged forward, not to wrestle its prey to the ground, but to strike and withdraw. Its height and long neck played an important role in this strategy. While many predators could only reach the lower legs or tail, Giganotosaurus could drive its jaws high into the flank, shoulder, or base of the neck of a sauropod. Each sweeping bite dragged serrated teeth through thick muscle, opening deep wounds where major blood vessels and powerful muscles lay close to the surface. Instead of a single killing blow, a series of these cuts could weaken a giant over hours or even days. There is evidence showing that such a strategy fits with patterns seen in modern ecosystems. Large predators like lions and hyenas often fail to bring down big prey immediately. They inflict severe injuries, then follow the wounded animal over long distances, tracking scent, blood, and disturbed ground until it finally collapses from shock or blood loss, Giganotosaurus, with strong legs and a relatively light build for its length, may have been one of the most persistent hunters of its time. Once a victim carried those gaping wounds, escape became less and less likely. Every step meant more blood lost, more strength drained, and more chances for the predator to strike again. In this way, Giganotosaurus ruled by attrition rather than instant destruction, turning the open floodplain into a slow, inescapable trap. But this blade-toothed giant was not the only master of such tactics. Across the ancient world, other Carcharodontosaurids honed similar methods into their own deadly arts. Those deadly arts are known today from silent traces locked in stone. For Giganotosaurus, the record is incomplete, but it is still powerful enough to reveal a giant that shaped its world. Its fossils are mostly partial skeletons, scattered skull pieces, and isolated bones. Yet together, they form a clear outline of a predator among the largest land hunters of all time. Scientists have used these scattered remains to reconstruct its general form with reasonable confidence. A long, deep skull, a muscular neck, a barrel-shaped body, and a tail built for balance all emerge from the rock. Leg bones show that it was not a slow plotter, but a strong, relatively light-framed dinosaur for its size, stretching more than 12 meters from nose to tail. Even with gaps, there is evidence showing that this animal rivaled or even exceeded Tyrannosaurus rex in length. The world it hunted in is recorded in the same formations. In the rocks of Patagonia, the bones of giant titanosaurs such as Andysaurus and Argentinosaurus lie not far from the remains of Giganotosaurus. These long-necked herbivores, some among the heaviest land animals ever, formed massive herds across the mid-Cretaceous floodplains. Their ribs, vertebrae, and limb bones, found side by side with Carcharodontosaurid teeth, suggest a community where towering plant eaters and blade-toothed hunters constantly tested each other's limits. Other herbivorous dinosaurs appear in these layers as well, including smaller sauropods and ornithopods. Together, they created a rich prey base that likely played an important role in driving the evolution of such an enormous predator. A hunter that could track, harass, and bleed these giants would control the flow of energy through the entire environment, influencing where herds moved, where they drank, and even which young survived. Yet, for all this, some of the most intriguing questions remain unanswered. Did Giganotosaurus hunt alone, or did it cooperate with others of its kind? Clear pack hunting evidence, like multiple trackways moving in coordinated patterns, has not been found for this species. However, related Carcharodontosaurids and other large theropods sometimes appear in bone beds with several individuals together, hinting that loose groups might have formed around carcasses or during certain seasons. In the modern world, lions, wolves, and even crocodiles can shift between solitary hunting and temporary cooperation. Giganotosaurus may have done something similar. What is certain is the sheer scale of its bones and teeth. Each tooth is a serrated blade, each jaw a strong cutting frame, and each limb bone a pillar supporting many tons of muscle. Any animal this large, armed with such weaponry, would have profoundly reshaped the ecosystems it entered, turning calm floodplains into arenas of constant risk. And yet, this giant still hides behind missing pieces. How did it sound? How often did it attack the largest titanosaurs? What behaviors have left no trace at all, waiting for the next unexpected fossil to bring them back from many millions of years ago? In another part of the world, far from the southern lands of Giganotosaurus, a different blade-toothed monarch was rising. While one giant hunted among South American floodplains, its close relative claimed a separate throne across the sea, turning ancient deserts and river systems into a vast hunting ground. This predator was Carcharodontosaurus, one of the most fearsome carnivorous dinosaurs ever found in Africa. It lived in what is now northern Africa around 100 to 94 million years ago, long before Tyrannosaurus rex appeared in North America. During that time, the region was not an empty desert, but a warm, humid environment of broad rivers, seasonal lakes, and rich floodplains. In this complex world, Carcharodontosaurus played an important role at the very top of the food chain. Its name means shark-toothed lizard, and that title is no exaggeration. The long, deep jaws of Carcharodontosaurus held rows of laterally compressed, serrated teeth that strongly resembled those of a great white shark. Instead of crushing bone like a tyrannosaur, these teeth were specialized for slicing through flesh, opening huge wounds, and causing devastating blood loss. Scientists have found teeth with fine, saw-like edges, clear evidence showing that this dinosaur was adapted to carve through the muscles and skin of giant prey with frightening efficiency. The skull of Carcharodontosaurus was itself a weapon. It stretched over 1.6 meters in length, longer than many adult humans are tall, and was supported by a strong neck and a massive, muscular body. Estimates suggest that the entire animal reached 12 to 13 meters from snout to tail, placing it firmly among the largest known land predators. What would it have looked like to see such a giant step from the shadows of a riverbank, its head alone as large as a small car? This size was not wasted. Northern Africa at this time held huge herbivorous dinosaurs, including long-necked sauropods and heavy-bodied ornithopods, along with armored forms that needed powerful jaws to penetrate their defenses. Large crocodiliforms filled the waterways, and other strong carnivores, including smaller theropods, shared the landscape. In such a crowded and dangerous environment, only the most capable hunters could dominate, and Carcharodontosaurus appears to have been one of the most successful. Its slicing bite, long stride, and towering height would have allowed it to track, test, and finally overwhelm even the largest victims. In this way, the world of giant blade-toothed killers was divided. While Giganotosaurus ruled the South in ancient South America, Carcharodontosaurus stood as its northern counterpart in Africa, both belonging to a wider dynasty of Carcharodontosaurids that spread across multiple continents. How would these predators have compared in speed, strategy, and raw killing power? As the story continues, other African giants will reveal just how complex this deadly community truly was, and how it shaped the path that later led to tyrannosaur dominance far away. In the middle of the Cretaceous, long before the sand seas of the modern Sahara formed, this part of Africa was one of the most vibrant hunting grounds on Earth. Instead of endless dunes, broad rivers wound across green floodplains, feeding coastal swamps, forested deltas, and shallow inland seas under a warm, humid sky. Scientists have evidence showing that this region was laced with waterways rather than desert. Rock layers hold fossilized river channels, mudstones from floodplains, and marine sediments filled with shells and fish bones. These clues reveal an environment where land and water blended together, creating tangled shorelines and rich river margins that attracted giant dinosaurs from every direction. In this setting, huge plant-eating dinosaurs dominated the open spaces. Long-necked sauropods moved in herds across the floodplains, stripping leaves from tall trees and churning the muddy ground with their powerful feet. Stockier ornithopods grazed lower vegetation, while armored dinosaurs with strong, bony plates and spikes formed living fortresses along the forest edge. Every migration, every stop at a river bend created opportunities for predators. Along the channels and lagoons, another danger waited. Giant crocodiliforms, some longer than a bus, lurked in the shallows, their teeth ready to trap anything that came too close to the water. Above them, early birds flapped between trees, and pterosaurs cruised the humid air, scanning the surface for fish. The sky, the water, and the land were all crowded with life, each layer filled with hunters and prey. On the shorelines, Carcharodontosaurus stood as one of the most fearsome land predators in this entire system. With a skull over 1.5 meters long and blade-like teeth built to slice flesh, it focused on large herbivorous dinosaurs along river margins and open floodplains. Instead of crushing bone, its strong jaws and sharp teeth turned living muscle into deep, bleeding wounds that could bring down even massive sauropods through blood loss and exhaustion. Yet Carcharodontosaurus did not rule alone. This same environment also supported Spinosaurus, a semi-aquatic giant that stalked the rivers themselves, along with other theropods that hunted smaller prey on land. How did so many huge predators survive side by side? Scientists have suggested that each species occupied slightly different niches, with Carcharodontosaurus targeting big land herbivores, Spinosaurus specializing in large fish, and other hunters filling the gaps between. Then comes an important pattern interrupt in this deadly picture. Almost every size class of animal, from fish to sauropods, faced multiple threats at once. A sauropod calf might fear both river ambushes and open plain chases, while even a predator risked surprise attacks near the water's edge. This overlapping danger created a complex web of interactions where confrontations between large carnivores were possible whenever territories or carcasses overlapped. As a result, mid-Cretaceous North Africa was not just rich, it was hazardous in every direction. Along nearly every river bend, behind almost every stand of trees, something large and powerful could be waiting. In the next part of this story, the focus shifts deeper into these waterways, where Spinosaurus turned the same Saharan rivers into a hunting ground that challenged even Carcharodontosaurus for dominance. While Spinosaurus ruled the waterways, Carcharodontosaurus commanded the land with a very different set of weapons. At the center of its power was a skull that turned the front of its body into a living blade. This was not just a large head. It was a precision-engineered killing structure that had been shaped by millions of years of predatory pressure. The skull of Carcharodontosaurus stretched well over 1.5 meters in the largest individuals, long and deep, but surprisingly light for its size. Large openings, called fenestrae, cut through the bones like windows. These gaps reduced weight, but they were not weaknesses. Strong struts of bone ran between them, directing forces along safe paths and buttressing key stress points. This design allowed the animal to swing and bite with great force without shattering its own skull. Scientists have compared this structure to a natural truss bridge, with each bar of bone carrying load during a struggle. When the jaws slammed shut on a struggling herbivore, the stress did not concentrate in one fragile area. Instead, it spread through the arches and ridges of the skull, helping this predator keep its grip even as prey twisted and pushed back. In an environment filled with huge muscular plant eaters, such reinforcement played an important role in survival. Inside this skull, the teeth formed one of the most distinctive killing tools of any dinosaur. The teeth were long, laterally compressed and sharply edged, with heavy serrations running along both the front and back margins. Each tooth was slightly curved backward, almost identical in cross-section to the teeth of a great white shark. They were not built to crush, they were built to slice. Evidence showing that these teeth worked like steak knives comes from microscopic wear patterns and broken tooth tips found in fossils. As the jaws closed, the serrations bit into flesh, helping each tooth saw through thick muscle and skin. Instead of delivering a single crushing blow, Carcharodontosaurus could open wide and clamp down along a long tooth row, cutting across a broad section of a prey animal's flank or neck. How much blood would that kind of wound spill in just a few seconds? Strong jaw-closing muscles anchored to the rear of the skull and to the lower jaw drove this motion. The long tooth row meant more contact points with the prey, spreading force and increasing cutting efficiency. Powerful neck muscles attached to the back of the skull then pulled back and up, turning the entire head into a giant, serrated blade. With a sideways wrench or upward jerk, huge chunks of flesh could be torn free. Compared to Tyrannosaurus rex, whose thick, rounded teeth and deep skull were suited for bone-crushing bites, Carcharodontosaurus represented a different philosophy of killing. Its jaws were less about smashing skeletons and more about rapid, high-efficiency flesh removal. Instead of breaking bones to reach marrow, it could strip meat from a massive sauropod in repeated, devastating slashes. In a way, it turned its victims into their own worst enemy, letting blood loss and shock finish what the first bite began. This contrast raises an important question. In a world where one predator sliced and another crushed, which strategy truly ruled the ancient food chain? The answer becomes even more complex when another giant, blade-toothed hunter enters the story, one that pushed this flesh-shearing approach to an even greater scale. In the mid-Cretaceous of North Africa, that other giant, blade-toothed hunter was Carcharodontosaurus, one of the most formidable land predators that ever lived. Its world was a crowded arena of giants, where every riverbank and floodplain could become a killing ground in an instant. Fossils of Carcharodontosaurus are frustratingly incomplete, yet they are also deeply informative. Scientists have skull elements, isolated teeth, and some postcranial bones that allow a clear picture of its general size and proportions. The skull alone stretched well over 1.5 meters, long and low, packed with laterally compressed, serrated teeth. The limb bones that have been found show a large but relatively lightly built animal, suggesting powerful legs and a body made to move with surprising speed for such a giant. These fossils hint at a hunter that patrolled broad river corridors and lush floodplains. In this environment, herds of large herbivorous dinosaurs, such as long-necked sauropods and bulky ornithopods, gathered to feed and drink. Crossing a muddy channel or climbing a slick bank, their footing was uncertain, and their view of the water's edge was often blocked. This was the moment when a slicing-jawed predator had its best chance. Ambush from cover, a rush from slightly higher ground, or a charge at a struggling animal mid-crossing could turn a dangerous river into a deadly trap. Tooth marks and scattered teeth provide important clues to this behavior. In several North African sites, isolated Carcharodontosaurus teeth have been discovered close to herbivore bones, sometimes mixed with the remains of multiple individuals. Direct bite-marked bones are rare, but there is evidence showing that some ribs and limb bones carry shallow grooves and slashes that match its blade-like teeth, rather than the crushing bite of later tyrannosaurs. These marks suggest repeated slicing attacks that removed large strips of flesh, while leaving much of the skeleton intact. Yet Carcharodontosaurus did not rule this world alone. The same river systems also held Spinosaurus, with its long, crocodile-like skull and giant crocodiliforms lurking in the channels. How did such huge predators share the same environment without destroying their own food supply? Most scientists see niche separation as the answer. Spinosaurus, with dense bones and a powerful tail, was likely focused on aquatic prey such as giant fish, while the massive crocodiliforms attacked animals at the water's edge. Carcharodontosaurus, in contrast, dominated on land, targeting big plant-eating dinosaurs that moved between feeding grounds. In this setting, survival meant more than catching prey. It meant avoiding the jaws of rivals as well. A wounded sauropod at a river crossing might draw Spinosaurus from the shallows and crocodile relatives from below, turning a single kill into a chaotic, dangerous gathering. Carcharodontosaurus was a master of this crowded ecosystem, a flesh-slicing hunter that had to fight not only against the defenses of its prey, but against other killers drawn to the same blood-filled water. The next question is how such a giant could keep its edge in a world where even the top predator was never truly alone. In this crowded arena of killers, one pattern seems clear. For many millions of years, the giants that ruled the land were blade-toothed hunters like Allosaurus, Giganotosaurus, and Carcharodontosaurus, built to slice flesh and spill blood on dry ground. Long, deep skulls, serrated teeth like steak knives, and strong neck muscles turned every bite into a tearing wound that weakened enormous plant-eating dinosaurs with speed and shock. These predators relied on open spaces, chase and ambush, and the ability to rush in strike hard, and retreat before a tail, horn, or claw could smash their bones. Their power came from movement across the land. Allosaurus lunged at sauropods in Jurassic floodplains. Giganotosaurus stalked titanosaurs in South America. Carcharodontosaurus prowled North African river margins, its jaws designed to open wide and rake through muscle. The dynasty of land blades seemed complete. A successful design repeated across continents. Then, in the same region that Carcharodontosaurus hunted, another giant theropod followed a very different path. Spinosaurus, one of the most unusual dinosaurs ever discovered, appears to have stepped away from a purely terrestrial lifestyle and into the water. Instead of sharpening the same cutting tools, this predator reshaped its entire body to dominate rivers and wetlands that flowed through North Africa during the mid-Cretaceous. Its long, narrow skull looked less like a flesh-slicing Carcharodontosaur and more like a massive crocodile, with conical teeth better for gripping slippery prey than carving it. Scientists have found fossils with dense limb bones that would have helped it stay submerged rather than float, and hind limbs that were shorter and more suited to paddling than sprinting. Broad feet and a tall, flexible tail suggest a swimmer, not a runner. This was a giant that traded speed on land for control in the water. The overlap in time and place with Carcharodontosaurus is striking. Two apex hunters shared the same general environment, yet their weapons and strategies diverged almost completely. One used slicing teeth and powerful legs to attack huge herbivores on the floodplain. The other seems to have focused on giant fish and aquatic animals, lurking in deep channels and along swampy banks. What forced such a dramatic split in design and behavior? This is the moment in the story where the pattern breaks. Instead of another land-based pursuit hunter, there is a semi-aquatic ambush specialist, hunting more like a crocodile or even a gigantic heron, striking from below or beside the water's surface. Evidence showing that Spinosaurus may have spent much of its time in the water challenges the traditional image of theropods as strictly land predators and shows how the environment played an important role in shaping their evolution. Spinosaurus has also become one of the most debated apex predators in dinosaur history. New fossils, from tailbones to leg proportions, keep changing how scientists reconstruct its posture, its swimming ability, and its true level of danger. Each discovery raises new questions about how this river monster lived and sets the stage for a closer look at just how far a dinosaur could go in becoming a hunter of two worlds. Long before Tyrannosaurus rex appeared in late Cretaceous North America, another giant hunter ruled a very different kind of kingdom. In the warm, river-choked environments of what is now North Africa, one of the most unusual predators in dinosaur history patrolled the water's edge and slipped beneath the surface in search of prey. This was Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, a river tyrant that turned the classic idea of a land-stalking killer on its head. Spinosaurus lived around 112 to 93 million years ago during the mid-Cretaceous period. At that time, broad rivers, swamps, and coastal lagoons covered large parts of northern Africa, creating a world filled with giant fish, crocodile-like reptiles, and many other dinosaurs. In this rich environment, Spinosaurus grew to enormous size, possibly longer than T-Rex, with a body that looked part traditional theropod and part strange aquatic specialist. Its very name, spine lizard, comes from one of its most dramatic features. Along its back, the vertebrae carried extremely tall neural spines, some over 1.5 meters high, forming a large sail or hump. These spines were made of strong bones that rose like the ribs of a ship's frame. The exact shape of the soft tissue between them is still debated, but the outline of this structure made Spinosaurus instantly recognizable, even among giant dinosaurs. Scientists have proposed several functions for this sail or hump. It may have helped with display, making the animal look even larger to rivals or potential mates. It could also have played an important role in regulating body temperature by catching wind and sun along the riverbanks. Whatever its main purpose, this towering structure added to the sense of danger when such a predator rose from the water's surface. The skull of Spinosaurus tells an equally striking story. Long and narrow, with a crocodile-like snout and conical teeth, it was not built to crush bone like the deep, heavy skull of T-Rex. Instead, its teeth formed a strong, interlocking trap ideal for gripping slippery prey. Scientists have found evidence showing that its jaws and snout were lined with pressure-sensitive openings, similar to those in modern crocodiles, suggesting that it could detect movement in the water and strike with precision. Other parts of its body point to a semi-aquatic lifestyle many millions of years before T-Rex evolved. The limb bones were unusually dense, helping to counteract buoyancy and keep the animal submerged. The hind legs were shorter than in many other large theropods, and the feet may have been broad and useful for paddling or walking through soft river mud. Recent fossils of the tail show tall, flexible spines and a deep profile, creating a powerful, paddle-like tail suited for swimming. This combination of traits forces a new view of what a most dangerous dinosaur could be. Instead of a fast land runner chasing herds across open plains, Spinosaurus appears to have been a river-stalking specialist, hunting giant fish and other aquatic prey. In the same ecosystems, blade-toothed killers like Carcharodontosaurus dominated the land, but in the water, Spinosaurus may have been the top predator, turning the rivers themselves into hunting grounds. Yet even with these dramatic fossils, many questions remain. How exactly did Spinosaurus move on land with its short legs and massive sail? Could it truly swim with the power of a modern crocodile? Or did it mostly wade in shallow channels, waiting to ambush passing prey? Ongoing discoveries continue to change estimates of its overall size, body proportions, and posture, showing that scientists are still piecing together how this hunter lived between two worlds. These debates make Spinosaurus one of the most dynamic case studies in dinosaur research. Each new bone and each new analysis reshapes its image, from a towering land predator to a deep-tailed swimmer, and perhaps something in between. As the picture of this river tyrant becomes clearer, it also prepares the ground for comparing its watery reign with the more familiar rule of tyrannosaurs on land, raising a larger question. What truly defines the greatest apex predator of the dinosaur age? To understand that reign, the scene must shift from the bones to the world that surrounded them. Many millions of years ago in the mid-Cretaceous, the land that is now North Africa was not an endless dry desert. Instead, it was a drowned kingdom of water and heat, where powerful rivers carved across the land and spread into wide floodplains under a heavy, humid sky. For millions of years, these rivers formed a tangled network of channels, mangrove-like swamps, and shallow coastal lagoons. The air was thick with moisture, and seasonal floods regularly drowned the low ground. Instead of sand dunes, there were muddy banks, reed beds, and dense vegetation clinging to every raised island. In this wet environment, the true highways of life were not on land. They flowed silently from the interior to the sea. Scientists have uncovered fossils from this region that reveal a remarkably rich aquatic community. Giant sawfish cruised the channels with long, blade-edged snouts. Coelacanths, living fossils in their own right, lurked in deeper pools. Large lungfish rested in the mud, able to survive when waters dropped. Around them moved strong crocodiliforms, heavy-shelled turtles, and pterosaurs that patrolled the skies above, diving toward the surface to seize fish with sharp teeth and narrow jaws. On the scattered dry patches, various herbivorous dinosaurs moved between the river margins and higher ground. Long-necked sauropods, duck-billed relatives, and armored forms all grazed and browsed near the water's edge. Among them hunted other theropods, including Carcharodontosaurus, one of the most fearsome land predators of its time, with a deep skull and slicing teeth built to open massive wounds. Yet even this blade-toothed hunter shared its territory with a very different kind of giant, In this flooded world, Spinosaurus likely played an important role as an apex predator tied to the rivers themselves. Its long, narrow snout, conical teeth, dense bones, and powerful tail suggest a body specialized for swimming after large fish. Evidence showing that its limbs and body proportions were suited to an aquatic lifestyle indicates that it hunted mostly in the water, slipping between channels and lagoons where prey was most abundant. But could such a hunter ignore chances on land? Most scientists think it did not. Spinosaurus probably scavenged carcasses washed into the rivers and may have opportunistically attacked unwary dinosaurs that ventured too close to the shoreline. In this way, it linked aquatic and terrestrial food webs, turning drowned forests and quiet backwaters into deadly hunting grounds. The abundance of aquatic prey meant that energy in this ecosystem flowed primarily through the rivers and lakes. Every migration of fish, every spawning event, concentrated food into moving bands of life. Spinosaurus followed those currents, a living engine drawing strength from the ceaseless movement of water and flesh. At dawn, this world could appear almost peaceful. Mist clung to the warm surface of the river, muffling sound and softening shapes. Then a faint ripple spread across the water, followed by the slow rise of a tall sail and the brief glint of conical teeth breaking the surface tension. In such moments, the drowned kingdom revealed its true ruler, and the calm veneer of the floodplain gave way to silent, sudden violence. Beneath that rising sail was a body unlike that of any other giant predator. Spinosaurus did not match the deep-chested, long-legged profiles seen in many famous meat-eating dinosaurs. Instead, its frame stretched low and elongated, with a narrow torso and a back crowned by tall neural spines, forming either a dramatic sail or a heavy muscular hump that rose like a moving wall above the river surface. These spines were extensions of the vertebrae, some more than a meter tall, and they played an important role in shaping the animal's outline. Along this ridge sat a long, low neck that led to a skull shaped less like that of a typical theropod, and more like an enormous crocodile. The snout was long and narrow, packed with conical teeth, ideal for gripping slippery prey. All of this was balanced over relatively short hind limbs, giving the entire body a strange, almost crocodile on stilts appearance when seen on land. For many years, artists and scientists imagined Spinosaurus walking the floodplains in a pose similar to that of Tyrannosaurus rex, with a high hip position and a powerful, land-based stride. Early reconstructions showed it as a mostly terrestrial hunter that simply happened to have a sail on its back. However, new fossils and fresh analysis have provided evidence showing that this picture was incomplete. The proportions of the legs, the shape of the tail, and the density of the limb bones all point in a different direction. Scientists have discovered that the limb bones of Spinosaurus were unusually dense compared with those of many other large predators. Instead of being filled with large air spaces, these bones were more solid, adding weight to the body. In aquatic animals, such dense bones help control buoyancy, preventing the body from floating too high and allowing a predator to stay submerged and stable. Behind the hips, the tail was deep and laterally compressed, forming a tall, flexible fin that could sweep side to side with strong strokes, much like the tail of a giant newt or crocodile. Taken together, these features suggest a more horizontally oriented, semi-aquatic body plan. Rather than towering over the ground like T-Rex, Spinosaurus likely held its body closer to the waterline, using its tail as a powerful propeller and its broad feet to push against soft riverbeds. Its relatively small but functional arms carried large claws, which may have been used to hook struggling fish, brace against the shore, or stabilize the body in shallow channels where footing was uncertain. In this way, Spinosaurus seems to represent one of the most striking compromises between land and water ever seen in dinosaurs. It was not a fast sprinter of open plains, nor a fully marine reptile lost to the depths. Instead, it was a dangerous in-between hunter, shaped by an environment of wide rivers and shifting sandbanks, able to strike from within the current itself. But how did such a specialized body change the way it hunted? And what happened when this river giant met rivals on the shore? When this river giant slipped beneath the surface, its most dangerous weapons did not look like those of a typical land hunter. Instead of a deep, crushing skull like Tyrannosaurus or the blade-toothed Carcharodontosaurids, Spinosaurus carried a long, narrow snout, stretched out like the jaws of a massive crocodile. This shape was not an accident. It was the first part of an aquatic arsenal designed for precision rather than brute force. The snout of Spinosaurus was lined with conical, non-serrated teeth. These teeth were not shaped to slice through thick flesh or saw into bones, but to grip. Their round cross-section and smooth edges helped them hold slippery prey, such as large fish, without snapping the catch in half too early. Scientists have found fossils of related spinosaurs with fish scales and bones preserved in their stomach regions, evidence showing that this family of predators focused heavily on aquatic prey. Along the sides of that narrow snout, small pits dotted the bones, forming rows of tiny openings. In living crocodiles, similar pits contain pressure-sensing organs that detect ripples and movements in murky water. Many scientists see this as one of the most important clues to the hunting style of Spinosaurus. In dark, sediment-filled rivers, sight alone was not enough. Sensitive snout tips may have allowed it to feel the faint push of a swimming fish, even when the animal itself remained almost completely hidden. The teeth did not simply line up in a straight row. They interlocked, with upper and lower teeth fitting together like the bars of a cage. This pattern helped trap prey once it was caught, stopping a thrashing fish from sliding free. When the jaws snapped shut sideways across the current, the interlocking teeth created a living fish trap, turning the long skull into a gripping device instead of a bone-crushing hammer. Behind the head, strong neck muscles and a reinforced skull architecture allowed quick, lateral strikes. Rather than driving the jaws straight down with a single massive bite, Spinosaurus likely swung its head in fast, sweeping motions, much like a crocodile snapping at fish near the surface. The joints between skull bones and the way the neck attached played an important role in absorbing twisting forces as it shook and repositioned prey. Spinosaurus was not limited to its jaws alone. Its forelimbs were powerful, with large curved claws that could hook, pin, or rake struggling animals. These claws may have dragged prey from shallows or pinned large fish against the riverbed. Behind them, the tall, muscular tail acted like a paddle. Fossils show broad, high-tail vertebrae that increased surface area, giving strong side-to-side thrusts. With each sweep, the dinosaur could lunge forward, adjust position, or hold itself steady in a strong current. Together, snout, teeth, claws, and tail formed a specialized hunting toolkit. Spinosaurus was not built to crush bones like Tyrannosaurus, but to dominate aquatic prey with stealth, grip, and rapid, controlled strikes. In the river systems of North Africa, many millions of years ago, these adaptations turned quiet channels and deep pools into its personal killing grounds. But in such dangerous waters, what happened when this semi-aquatic hunter crossed paths with the great land predators that shared its environment? In those same river systems, many millions of years ago, the true danger did not always come from the banks. It rose silently from below. Spinosaurus turned the water itself into a weapon, and its strange body begins to make sense when translated into performance rather than simple appearance. Scientists have examined its long, narrow skull and conical teeth and compared the chemical signatures locked inside the fossils with those of other dinosaurs. The oxygen isotopes in its bones and teeth match patterns seen in animals that spent much of their lives in water. There is also evidence showing that its diet was rich in aquatic prey, with fossil sites preserving the remains of giant sawfish and other large fish in the same layers. Together, these clues point to a semi-aquatic specialist not a typical land-stalking hunter. The limbs of Spinosaurus tell the same story. Its hind legs were short for such a giant predator, with proportions that would have limited running speed on firm ground. At the same time, the bones of its legs and tail were unusually dense, lacking the deep air spaces seen in many other theropod dinosaurs. This extra weight acted like a natural ballast, helping the animal stay stable and partially submerged instead of bobbing on the surface. In performance terms, it traded sprinting ability for control and maneuverability in water. Trackways and fossil distributions add more support. Footprints tentatively linked to Spinosaurus appear in sediments laid down by shallow channels and muddy banks, not in dry upland deposits. Its skeletal remains are concentrated in ancient river deltas and wetland systems that once cut across northern Africa. This pattern suggests that its environment played an important role in shaping its behavior, keeping it close to slow-moving channels, floodplains, and deep pools where large fish and other aquatic animals gathered. How would such a predator have hunted? Its long snout, pressure-sensitive jaws, and interlocking teeth resemble a blend of crocodile and giant fish-eating mammal. Like a modern crocodile, Spinosaurus could have waded in murky water with only its eyes and nostrils above the surface, then launched forward in a sudden lunge. Its powerful forelimbs and broad feet would have helped it grip struggling prey, while the strong tail and dense body allowed quick turns beneath the surface. In deeper stretches, it may have behaved more like a huge, scaled otter or a monstrous heron, cruising slowly, then snapping sideways at passing fish with rapid, sideways strikes. Instead of chasing fast land animals over long distances, it turned patience, stealth, and short, explosive bursts into deadly tools. In this way, it became one of the most dangerous predators of its time, but only inside its own realm. For anything that entered those dark, slow-moving waters, escape would have been unlikely. Yet on the riverbanks, other giant hunters waited. What happened when this ghost in the water met the blade-toothed killers of the land? When river ghosts like Spinosaurus slid back into the water, the land did not fall silent. For many millions of years, the shorelines, plains, and forests were ruled by other giants with long, blade-like teeth and powerful jaws, turning every landscape into a network of killing grounds. Across the late Jurassic and much of the Cretaceous, allosaurids and carcharodontosaurids dominated as apex predators on several continents. Allosaurus stalked sauropod herds in what is now North America, while later relatives such as Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus ruled the southern lands with skulls over 1.5 meters long. These dinosaurs combined strong neck muscles, deep skulls, and serrated teeth that sliced flesh rather than crushed bone. Their reign lasted tens of millions of years before Tyrannosaurus rex even existed. In North Africa, Spinosaurus added another layer to this deadly hierarchy. Semi-aquatic and heavily built, it hunted giant fish and perhaps lunged at unwary dinosaurs that came to drink. Scientists have found fossils of these different predators in the same regions, suggesting that blade-toothed hunters on land and the river phantom in the water shared the same broad environment, each ruling a different hunting zone rather than constantly clashing. Then, around the mid-Cretaceous, something changed. Many of these great lineages began to decline or disappeared entirely. Global climates shifted, sea levels rose, and shallow inland seas spread across continents. Forests and floodplains were rearranged, and the herds of prey animals changed in size, shape, and distribution. There is evidence showing that some traditional hunting grounds were drowned beneath water or broken into isolated islands, fragmenting the territories that had supported giant predators. In this shifting world, the very traits that once made these hunters so successful may have become weaknesses. Huge, lightly built bodies that depended on large, predictable herds were vulnerable when the environment became unstable. As allosaurids vanished from many regions and Carcharodontosaurids faded from the fossil record, their absence left something important behind: empty roles at the top of the food chain. These vacant positions created ecological space. With fewer giant, blade-toothed killers, and with Spinosaurus and its relatives also declining, new opportunities opened for other carnivorous dinosaurs. Mid-sized hunters that had once lived in the shadows could expand, grow larger, and experiment with new strategies. This transition played an important role in shaping the next generation of apex predators. Among these shadow dwellers were the early Tyrannosauroids. At first, they were not giant bone crushers. They were smaller, more lightly built hunters with long legs, sharp teeth, and strong senses, probably feeding on juveniles, smaller dinosaurs, and any carcasses they could find. In ecosystems still controlled by allosaur-like giants, they survived by speed, caution, and versatility. Here the story turns. As the old dynasties of blade-toothed and river-hunting giants faded, these modest predators began to rise. How did their brains, senses, and jaws change as they stepped into the vacant throne? The next phase reveals how the Tyrannosaur dynasty slowly forged the tools that would make T-Rex one of the most feared predators in Earth's history. As the Tyrant dynasty began to rise, it did not begin with a giant. It began with shadows darting between the legs of larger hunters, in forests and floodplains ruled by other powerful predators many millions of years ago. Long before Tyrannosaurus rex, early Tyrannosauroids such as Dilong and Guanlong hunted in the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous. These dinosaurs lived in a world still dominated by allosaurids and, later, by Carcharodontosaurids with the long blade-like teeth. In this ancient environment, the small tyrant relatives were not kings at all. They were survivors in a giant's world, testing the first versions of weapons that would one day change the balance of power. Their bodies were very different from the massive forms that came later. Dilong and Guanlong were small to medium-sized predators, lightly built, with long legs and narrow, flexible tails that helped with balance during fast turns. Their arms were longer and more useful than the short, heavy forelimbs of later tyrannosaurs, with hands that could still grasp and hold struggling prey. This body plan suggests agile, pursuit-oriented hunters, able to chase down smaller animals rather than wrestle with giant plant-eating dinosaurs. Scientists have found fossils of these early tyrannosauroids in fine-grained rocks that preserve delicate details. In some, there is evidence showing that their bodies were covered with simple feathers. These feathers likely provided insulation in cooler climates, but they may also have been used for display, as patterns and colors signaled strength or maturity to rivals and mates. Even at this early stage, the Tyrant line was combining speed, insulation, and visual signals into a flexible survival strategy. Despite their modest size, important features of the future super predators were already present. Their skulls were relatively strong for their body length, with reinforced bones around the snout and jaws. The eyes faced more forward than in many other meat-eating dinosaurs, increasing depth perception and helping them judge distance during a chase or sudden leap. Their teeth were not yet the massive crushing tools of T-Rex, but they were sharp and well-rooted, able to slice into flesh and hold on while the prey struggled. In their ecosystems, these animals played an important role as mid-level predators. Larger allosaurids and Carcharodontosaurids dominated the top tier, attacking huge sauropods and heavily built plant eaters. Below them, early tyrannosauroids targeted smaller ornithopods, juvenile dinosaurs, and other quick-moving animals that shared rivers, forests, and open plains. This position forced them to be alert, fast, and adaptable, always ready to avoid stronger hunters while seeking chances to strike at weaker targets. In this sense, Dilong, Guanlong, and their relatives were apprentice killers of the Mesozoic. They refined balance, vision, and bite strength under constant pressure from larger rivals. What would happen when climate shifts and extinction events removed those rivals from the top of the food chain? The answer lies in the next stage, when these once modest hunters began to scale up their weapons and step, slowly but surely, toward true giant status. When larger rivals finally vanished from many continents, the stage was set for a dramatic transformation. The light, long-legged tyrannosauroids that once dodged between giants began to change into something far heavier, far more dangerous. Over millions of years, runners would become crushers. During the late Cretaceous, fossils show a steady increase in size and skull strength among these predators. Medium-sized hunters such as Appalachiosaurus in eastern North America already had deeper heads and more massive jaws than their earlier relatives. In the West, forms leading toward Daspletosaurus grew bulkier, with thick neck muscles anchoring to skulls built from strongly braced bones. Scientists have found evidence showing that these later tyrannosauroids were no longer just swift pursuit hunters. They were beginning to test the limits of raw bite power. One of the most striking changes was in body proportions. Early members of the group had longer arms and lighter frames, suited for agility and quick strikes. In later species, the arms became shorter but more robust, with heavy muscle attachments and strong shoulder girdles. At the same time, the skull became deeper, wider at the back, and reinforced with complex bony arches. This shift suggests that the front of the body was being redesigned around a single weapon, an incredibly strong, bone-crushing bite. The teeth also tell this story clearly. Earlier hunters often carried more blade-like teeth, good for slicing flesh but vulnerable to breaking under extreme pressure. In Appalachiosaurus, Daspletosaurus, and their close relatives, the teeth grew thicker and more rounded in cross-section, many shaped like a capital D when viewed from above. These teeth were built less like knives and more like chisels. They could withstand high forces, crack through bones, and keep functioning even after repeated violent impacts. Such changes did not happen in isolation. They played an important role in filling new ecological spaces that opened as other great predators disappeared. When Carcharodontosaurids and other blade-toothed giants vanished from many regions, their apex positions in the environment did not stay empty for long. Tyrannosaurs expanded into these vacant roles, facing large, heavily built plant-eating dinosaurs that demanded a different killing strategy. Crushing through bone to disable prey, or to tear apart carcasses before rivals arrived, became a powerful advantage. All of these trends reached their extreme expression in Tyrannosaurus rex. By the end of the Cretaceous, this predator carried a massive, deep skull, extremely thick D-shaped teeth, and a bite force that could pulverize bones with terrifying ease. Yet T-Rex was not an isolated marvel. It was the latest product of a long experiment in turning a once modest, agile hunter into a walking battering ram. Many millions of years before its reign, the world had already explored several very different ways to build a super predator. What unexpected twist would come next when changing climates and shifting continents reshaped the battlefield yet again? For many millions of years, that battlefield produced the same surprising answer again and again: giants. On different continents, in different ages, unrelated dinosaur lineages climbed toward the same role, becoming the largest, most dangerous hunters in their environments. This repeated pattern is known as convergent evolution, when distant branches on the tree of life grow into similar shapes because they face similar pressures. Allosaurids in the late Jurassic, Carcharodontosaurids and Spinosaurs in the early and mid-Cretaceous, and Tyrannosaurids in the late Cretaceous all reached enormous size. Yet their fossils show very different bodies. Allosaurus carried a light, flexible skull with sharp, laterally compressed teeth for slicing into sauropod flesh. Carcharodontosaurus and Giganotosaurus pushed that design even further, with deep, long skulls and blade-like teeth that acted almost like meat cleavers. In contrast, Tyrannosaurus rex developed thick, strong teeth and a massively reinforced skull for bone-crushing power. What drove such different predators toward the same towering scale? Scientists have found evidence showing that the answer lies in their ecosystems. In each case, there were abundant, large herbivores, wide-open habitats, and relatively stable climates that allowed slow-growing animals to live long lives. Herds of sauropods in the Jurassic, and later herds of hadrosaurs and horned dinosaurs, provided constant supplies of heavy prey. In such an environment, a large body, strong legs, and powerful jaws played an important role in controlling these giant plant eaters. Yet the solutions were not identical. Spinosaurs followed a different path. With long, narrow snouts filled with conical teeth and dense bones that helped with buoyancy control, they became semi-aquatic hunters. Their prey was often in the water, not just on land. This meant that a massive, heavy skull like that of T-Rex was less useful than a crocodile-like head that could snap sideways through water. Here, the apex predator role extended beyond the shoreline. Hunting style also converged and diverged. Some giants, such as Tyrannosaurids, seem built for short, explosive chases and devastating single bites that could crush bones and end a struggle quickly. Others, like Carcharodontosaurids, relied on repeated slashing bites, causing blood loss and shock. There is evidence showing that some allosaurids may have attacked in groups, while large tyrannosaurids might also have shown complex social behavior. In contrast, a huge spinosaur standing quietly in a river, waiting for fish or unwary dinosaurs to approach, represents a very different strategy. No single design was best for all times and places. Each giant predator was tuned to its own prey community, climate, and landscape. This creates a pattern interrupt in expectations. The perfect super predator did not exist. Instead, there were many different answers to the same deadly question. Seen this way, T-Rex becomes not the first or only super predator, but one of the most recent outcomes of a long series of experiments in power. The next step is to ask, when those experiments ended in disaster, which of these designs, if any, left a legacy that survived beyond the age of dinosaurs? Those experiments in power were not only about size or weapons. They were also about how these predators moved, waited, and killed. For many millions of years, ancient landscapes were divided between hunters that struck from the shadows and hunters that ran their prey to exhaustion. Allosaurus represents one of the most classic ambush designs. Its body was relatively light, with strong hind limbs and a flexible neck, well suited to sudden bursts of speed rather than long chases. In late Jurassic forests and floodplains, tree trunks, rocky ridges, and shallow riverbanks offered cover. Scientists have found fossils of sauropods and stegosaurs with deep, slashing wounds that match Allosaurus teeth, suggesting attacks launched at close range, aimed at vulnerable flanks and necks before the victim could react. In contrast, giants such as Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus were better adapted to more open ground. Their legs were long and their bodies stretched out, trading some compact strength for stride length. On broad floodplains filled with massive herbivores, this design allowed pursuit over greater distances. These hunters did not need to be the fastest sprinters. They needed to be fast enough for long enough to close in on a wounded or isolated animal. Their killing method also reflected this strategy of persistence. The skulls of Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus were long and relatively low, with blade-like, serrated teeth that sliced rather than crushed. Scientists have evidence showing that repeated slashing bites could remove huge pieces of flesh, causing rapid blood loss and shock. A single bite might not be fatal, but several well-placed bites over minutes or even hours could weaken a giant sauropod until it collapsed. Death came from many wounds, not one decisive blow. Tyrannosaurs followed a different path. Their skulls were deep and heavily built, with thick, strong teeth shaped more like blunt stakes than knives. This powerful design allowed bone-crushing bites that could shatter ribs and vertebrae. Instead of relying on many shallow cuts, a tyrannosaur aimed for a few catastrophic strikes to the skull, hips, or spine. Which is more dangerous? The hunter that bleeds a victim slowly, or the one that can end the struggle in seconds? Spinosaurus added another dimension to these strategies by moving much of the hunt into the water. Its long, narrow jaws, conical teeth, and dense bones formed an aquatic ambush system. In deep river channels, reduced buoyancy and a tall, flexible tail helped it maneuver quietly in three-dimensional space. Sensitive snouts and eyes, placed high on the head, likely detected ripples and shapes at the surface, allowing sudden upward or sideways strikes at giant fish, much like a crocodile combined with a heron. In every case, body design set strict limits on behavior. Leg length controlled sprinting and endurance. Tail stiffness, seen in Allosaurus and many raptors, stabilized sudden turns. Skull shape and tooth form dictated whether bones could be crushed, flesh could be sliced, or slippery prey could be gripped. These anatomical choices played an important role in deciding which hunting style each predator could actually use. This also changes what most dangerous really means. It might describe the fastest killer, the most persistent wounder, the most specialized fish hunter, or the predator that controlled the most critical resources, such as rivers and coastal lagoons. As the story continues, the question becomes not only who could kill, but who could keep ruling their environment when climates shifted and prey communities changed. In this ancient arms race, most dangerous is not a single title, but a question of weapon design. For millions of years, giant predators carried very different tools in their jaws, and each tool turned the hunt into a different kind of battle. Allosaurus stood near the beginning of this story. Its skull was relatively light, with large openings and thin interlocking bones that kept it strong without being heavy. The teeth were narrow, laterally compressed and serrated, more like rows of sharp knives than crushing spikes. This gave Allosaurus a saw for a head, built for repeated cutting bites. Scientists have found fossils of sauropods and stegosaurs with slashing wounds that match this kind of weapon, suggesting that Allosaurus attacked again and again, opening long bloody cuts rather than shattering bone in a single blow. Later, in the Cretaceous, the Carcharodontosaurids took the blade strategy even further. Their skulls were long and deep, and their teeth were some of the most striking cutting tools of any dinosaurs. These teeth resembled those of a great white shark, long, flat, and strongly serrated, ideal swords for driving deep into flesh. Evidence showing that Carcharodontosaurus and its relatives hunted enormous herbivores indicates that a single bite could remove huge chunks of muscle. Instead of focusing on breaking bones, these predators turned their prey into a mass of gaping wounds, causing rapid blood loss that played an important role in bringing giants down. In sharp contrast, Tyrannosaurids evolved a completely different style of killing. Their skulls were shorter but very tall and massively built, with thick, overlapping bones and powerful muscle attachments. The teeth were not blades, but heavy oval in cross-section and deeply rooted. Each tooth was a sledgehammer, able to punch through bone and keep working under extreme pressure. Many fossils of plant-eating dinosaurs have been discovered with crushed bones and deep punctures that match tyrannosaurid teeth. Scientists have also found bone fragments inside their fossilized stomach regions, clear evidence showing that these hunters bit straight through skeletons and swallowed the broken pieces. Spinosaurus occupied another end of this spectrum. Its skull was long and narrow, lined with conical, non-serrated teeth, and the jaws had interlocking tips, perfect for gripping. Rather than a saw, sword, or sledgehammer, this predator carried a harpoon. The teeth were designed to pierce and hold slippery prey such as giant fish, not to slice large chunks or pulverize bone. Its dense bones and riverine environment support this view of a semi-aquatic hunter that seized and controlled struggling animals in the water. These different weapons meant that each predator killed in a different way. The saw of Allosaurus, the swords of the Carcharodontosaurids, the sledgehammers of the Tyrannosaurids, and the harpoon of Spinosaurus all shaped what they hunted and how they ruled their environments many millions of years ago. But what happens when such deadly tools must face changing climates, vanishing prey, and entirely new rivals? Those deadly tools did not just vanish, they left scars in the rock. For millions of years, every bite, kick, and crushing impact had a chance to write a record in bone. Long after the flesh decayed, the skeletons of prey and predator kept silent stories of attack and survival locked inside their damaged surfaces. One of the most important clues comes from bite marks. Many fossils of plant-eating dinosaurs have been discovered with grooves, pits, and deep punctures that perfectly match the teeth of the predators that lived beside them. On sauropod tails from the Jurassic, U-shaped gouges line up with the jaws of Allosaurus, showing where powerful bites tore into living giants. Some bones are shattered and splintered, suggesting feeding on carcasses, while others show clean punctures that later healed. These healed injuries are evidence showing that attacks were survived, proving that hunters struck living prey, missed vital organs, and sometimes failed. Predators themselves also carry traces of combat. Skulls of large theropods often show broken jaws, cracked ribs, and infected bite wounds that later healed with rough, swollen bone. In some Allosaurus and Carcharodontosaurid fossils, tooth-shaped scars match their own kind, suggesting intraspecific combat over mates, territory, or carcasses. Such pathologies played an important role in revealing that these were not rare accidents. They were part of daily life in dangerous environments many millions of years ago. To move beyond scars and into mechanics, scientists have turned to biomechanical modeling. CT scans of skulls and jaws allow detailed three-dimensional models to be built, capturing every ridge, opening, and joint surface in the bones. Digital muscles are then reconstructed, based on attachment sites and comparisons with birds and crocodiles, and computer simulations test how strong a bite each skull could deliver. When forces are applied, stress maps light up the digital skull, showing which parts resist crushing, which flex, and which would fail. These models reveal striking differences in killing style. Carcharodontosaurus, with its long, deep skull and blade-like teeth, shows stress patterns suited to powerful slashing bites that sliced flesh rather than crushing bone. Allosaurus appears adapted for repeated hatchet-like strikes, driving its upper jaws down into prey. By contrast, later tyrannosaurids show reinforced snouts and thick teeth that spread stress, ideal for bone-crushing bites. Such results give scientists evidence showing that earlier giants were already specialized, high-risk hunters. To interpret these patterns, comparisons with living animals are essential. Crocodiles demonstrate how conical teeth and strong neck muscles work together in ambush attacks. Big cats show how repeated bites to soft tissue can bleed large prey to death. Sharks, with their serrated teeth, offer a close parallel to the slicing dentitions of Carcharodontosaurids, while birds of prey illustrate how light skeletons and keen senses support agile strikes. These living analogs guide reconstructions of hunting strategies and even suggest whether some predators may have hunted alone or in loose groups. Yet the picture is never complete. Fossils are often broken, scattered, and altered by erosion, scavengers, and water currents. Many behaviors leave no clear mark in bone. Silent stalking, display rituals, or complex social interactions vanish without a trace. Taphonomic biases mean that fragile bones and entire environments can be underrepresented, hiding certain predators or prey from the record. Even with CT scans and powerful computers, every reconstruction carries uncertainty. Still, when bite marks, healed wounds, digital models, and modern analogs all point in the same direction, confidence grows. Converging lines of evidence show that these pre-T Rex hunters were not experimental, half-formed killers. They were fully realized apex predators, among the most dangerous animals that ever lived. The question is not whether they were deadly, but how such specialists responded when their worlds began to change. When those worlds began to change, the power of even the largest killers was tested. For many millions of years, giant blade-toothed and sail-backed hunters had ruled their habitats, but the ancient Earth itself could be one of the most dangerous forces of all. During the mid-Cretaceous, sea levels rose and fell, climates shifted, and continents continued to drift apart. Regions that had once been continuous, lush floodplains broke into islands, narrow coastal strips, and isolated basins. In North Africa, broad river systems that supported Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus were reshaped as shallow seas advanced and retreated. Habitats that once allowed huge predators to roam widely became fragmented, reducing hunting grounds and separating populations that had shared the same prey for millions of years. These physical changes in the environment did not act alone. As temperatures, rainfall patterns, and soils changed, plant communities shifted as well. Conifer forests, fern plains, and early flowering plants expanded or contracted in different regions. Scientists have found evidence showing that herbivore groups responded quickly, with some large sauropods declining in certain areas, while duck-billed and other ornithopod dinosaurs diversified elsewhere. When the mix of plant eaters changed, the entire food web above them was affected. A predator specialized for tackling giant sauropods might find far fewer suitable targets in a landscape suddenly dominated by faster, smaller herbivores. Regional extinction events mark this period like quiet breaks in the fossil record. In parts of South America and Africa, Carcharodontosaurids disappear from the rocks long before the end Cretaceous asteroid impact. Spinosaur fossils become rare or vanish from many former strongholds. Their ecological niches, once filled by powerful hunters with long skulls and slicing teeth, were left surprisingly empty. For a time, no single group seems to have taken full control of those abandoned apex positions. The bodies of these earlier giants may have played an important role in their downfall. Many were extremely large, with high energy demands and narrow hunting strategies. A Spinosaur adapted to stalking river channels for huge fish, or a Carcharodontosaur built to bleed massive sauropods, was finely tuned to a particular style of life. When rivers shifted, fish communities changed, or sauropods declined, such specialists were less able to switch to new prey than smaller, more generalist hunters. Could sheer size, once a great advantage, have become a dangerous burden during rapid environmental change? In the northern continents, another story was beginning. As blade-toothed giants and sail-backed fish hunters faded from many regions, smaller tyrannosauroids persisted in the background. Over time, these survivors evolved stronger skulls, deeper jaws, and thick, crushing teeth, rising step by step into the vacant roles. Extinction cleared the stage, and innovation followed. The fall of the old kings created the ecological space that would eventually allow tyrannosaurs to become the dominant apex predators of the late Cretaceous, setting the scene for the reign of Tyrannosaurus Rex itself. With the stage cleared and tyrannosaurs rising, a familiar question appears like a shadow at the edge of the fossil record. Did Tyrannosaurus Rex truly stand alone as the deadliest dinosaur of all time? Or was it simply the last champion in a much longer line of killers? For millions of years, different giants had already tested other ways to rule. Tyrannosaurus Rex was one of the most powerful land predators that ever lived. Its skull was deep and massively built, its strong bones locked together to handle a record-breaking bite force. Thick, rounded teeth could crush through armor, horns, and even the heavy bones of large prey. Scientists have found evidence showing that it regularly cracked and swallowed bone, using a powerful skull and neck to deliver devastating single bites that few animals could survive. Yet T-Rex did not stand above an empty field. In South America, Giganotosaurus grew at least as long, with a lighter frame and a long, low skull filled with blade-like teeth. In North Africa, Carcharodontosaurus carried a skull almost as long as a person is tall. with serrated teeth shaped like those of a great white shark. These predators were not bone crushers. They were flesh slicers, designed to open huge wounds and bleed down giant herbivores. Each belonged to the same elite club of apex hunters, but each solved the problem of killing in a different way. Ecological dominance ties them together more than size alone. In their own times and environments, these predators sat at the top of the food web, shaping everything beneath them. Allosaurus in the late Jurassic hunted among herds of sauropods and stegosaurs, leaving fossils with healed bite marks that show a repeated risky attacks on much larger prey. Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus stalked titanosaurs and other giant plant eaters, while T-Rex controlled populations of horned and duck-billed dinosaurs in late Cretaceous North America. Spinosaurus, ruling the great river systems, managed fish populations, and likely competed with other hunters along the water's edge. Each apex predator played an important role in regulating prey and even guiding the fortunes of scavengers that fed on their kills. Different kinds of danger help explain their separate reigns. T-Rex embodied raw power, using crushing bites and thick teeth to destroy bone. Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus focused on the scale of prey, targeting enormous titanosaurs with slashing jaws. Spinosaurus controlled its watery environment, with dense bones, a long snout, and a strong tail that turned rivers into hunting grounds. Allosaurus showed sheer versatility, attacking many types of prey and perhaps working in loose groups to bring down giants. Which of these designs was truly the most dangerous? The fossils suggest there is no single objective, most dangerous dinosaur. Instead, there were many deadly solutions, each tuned to a particular climate, prey community, and landscape, many millions of years apart. Dinosaur danger was not a single crown passed to T-Rex and held forever. It was a relay race of lethal champions, each ruling until environments shifted and new competitors rose. But if these forgotten kings shared the same throne in different ages, what happened when smaller, faster hunters entered their worlds and rewrote the rules of killing? Those smaller, faster hunters are not just ancient mysteries. Their strategies still echo in living predators today. To understand how these dinosaurs killed, the closest guide is not another fossil in stone, but the lions, sharks, crocodiles, and bears that stalk the modern world. Allosaurus, for example, hunted in a way that seems strangely familiar. Its light but strong skull, flexible neck, and sharp, laterally compressed teeth suggest repeated slashing attacks rather than a single killing bite. This pattern mirrors big cats, such as lions and leopards, and pack-hunting mammals like wolves or African wild dogs, which wound large prey again and again, letting blood loss and exhaustion finish the job. Scientists have found Allosaurus fossils with healed injuries and damaged ribs, evidence showing that it often clashed with giant sauropods and survived, much like a lion limping away from a dangerous buffalo. Carcharodontosaurids, including Carcharodontosaurus itself, carried this flesh-slicing style even further. Their long, deep skulls and blade-like, finely serrated teeth worked less like the crushing jaws of Tyrannosaurus, and more like the cutting edges of a great white shark. In the oceans, sharks tear huge strips from whales or seals and let shock and blood loss do the rest. On land, these dinosaurs likely used similar tactics on massive herbivores, turning each bite into a gaping wound. In both cases, the predator is a moving blade, not a bone-breaking hammer. Spinosaurus followed a different path, one that points directly to rivers and wetlands. Its long, narrow jaws, conical teeth, dense bones, and powerful tail fit a semi-aquatic ambush lifestyle. In this, it parallels crocodiles waiting at the water's edge, herons striking at fish with sudden precision, and mammals such as otters and fishing bears that patrol riverbanks for prey. Very different bodies, but the same challenge: catch slippery, fast-moving animals in a shifting water environment. Convergent solutions arose again and again, many millions of years apart. Tyrannosaurs, in contrast, represent one of the most extreme bone-crushing designs ever seen on land. Their thick, strong teeth and deep, reinforced skulls allowed them to bite through bones the size of a human leg. This approach is echoed in hyenas, which crack open carcasses for hidden marrow, and in large crocodiles that can splinter limb bones to reach rich nutrients. Fossils of prey dinosaurs with punctured, broken bones show that this strategy played an important role in recycling every part of a kill. Yet these comparisons have a limit. Modern predators help make the behavior of long-extinct hunters more intuitive, but the scale and specialization of the great theropods still exceed anything alive on land today. So what happens when the evidence shifts from tooth marks and hunting style to the senses that guided these killers through their ancient environments? For many millions of years before Tyrannosaurus rex, the senses of giant predators guided them across an already dangerous planet. This was not a world with a single ruler, but a patchwork of hunting kingdoms spread across the continents. Each region held its own apex killers, shaped by local prey, climate, and shifting ancient seas. In the late Jurassic, allosaurids dominated the land that is now Western North America. The famous Allosaurus stalked floodplains filled with long-necked sauropods and plated stegosaurs, using a light but strong skull and slicing teeth to open deep wounds. Scientists have found fossils of Allosaurus in parts of Europe as well, showing that related predators filled similar roles across the northern continents. In these regions, they were one of the most important controlling forces on giant plant-eating dinosaurs. Far to the south, other branches of this carnivorous dynasty held power. As the Jurassic gave way to the Cretaceous and the supercontinent broke apart, new lineages rose. By the mid-Cretaceous, Carcharodontosaurids had spread across much of Gondwana. In South America, giants like Giganotosaurus hunted huge herbivores on broad humid plains. In Africa, Carcharodontosaurus and its kin ruled coastal lowlands and inland basins. There is evidence showing that related forms also lived in places that were once connected landmasses, suggesting a near-global empire of blade-toothed hunters. These predators shared long, deep skulls and laterally compressed teeth, shaped more like the blades of sharks than the thick pegs of tyrannosaurs. Their bite style turned entire ecosystems into arenas of blood loss and exhaustion. Instead of crushing bone, they carved flesh, then tracked weakened prey across great distances. In many Gondwanan environments, such hunters played an important role at the very top of the food chain. Along the rivers and deltas of North Africa, another specialist carved out a different kingdom. Spinosaurus and its relatives lived beside broad meandering waterways that cut across hot coastal landscapes. Dense bones, shortened hind limbs, and a long crocodile-like skull with conical teeth point to a semi-aquatic lifestyle. Here the apex niche was not only on land, but also in the water, as these predators hunted giant fish and other aquatic animals along swampy channels and lagoons. At the same time, early tyrannosauroids moved quietly in the background. In Asia and parts of North America, they were smaller hunters and agile secondary predators, not yet the bone-crushing giants of the late Cretaceous. Their slender skulls, long legs, and sharp teeth suited them to chasing smaller dinosaurs, juveniles, and fast-moving prey. Fossils from China, Mongolia, and Western North America show that these early members of the Tyrannosaur family lived under the shadow of larger carnivores. Taken together, this global map reveals an important truth. Long before T-Rex, Earth was already a planet of predators, with every major landmass ruled by its own terrifying specialists. But how did these hunters actually sense their worlds, locate prey, and avoid rivals in such complex environments? To answer that, the focus turns from geography to the hidden power of sight, smell, and sound inside their skulls. For many millions of years, the story of deadly dinosaurs was not about Tyrannosaurus rex at all. It was about a long, shifting parade of hunters that rose to power, ruled their environments, and then disappeared into time's deep shadow. In the late Jurassic, around 150 million years ago, Allosaurus was one of the most feared predators on land. Its light but strong skull, sharp slicing teeth, and flexible neck turned sauropod herds into living targets. Fossils of broken ribs and healed bite marks on giant plant eaters provide evidence showing that repeated attacks were part of daily life. Every chase, every ambush pushed herd animals to evolve stronger legs, tighter group behavior, and, in some cases, heavy armor and tail weapons. Tens of millions of years later, the balance of power shifted again. In the mid-Cretaceous, blade-toothed giants such as Carcharodontosaurus in Africa and Giganotosaurus in South America dominated rich floodplains filled with huge herbivores. Their long, deep skulls and shark-like teeth were designed to open massive wounds rather than crush bone. Scientists have found fossils of these predators beside the remains of enormous sauropods, hinting at brutal hunts where blood loss, not a single killing bite, ended the struggle. The prey responded with size, thick bones, and sometimes heavy body armor that played an important role in survival. At the same time, in river systems of North Africa, Spinosaurus ruled a very different world. Dense bones, a long narrow snout, and a powerful tail made it a semi-aquatic specialist, hunting giant fish as easily as other dinosaurs. Here, the main arms race was not only between hunter and land-based prey, but also between predator and the shifting currents, floods, and droughts of its watery environment. Each of these apex hunters was both shaped by its world and, in turn, reshaped it. Seen across 150 million years, these dynasties of predators appear almost like passing storms. Allosaurus, the Carcharodontosaurids, Spinosaurus, early tyrannosauroids in Asia and North America. Each group rose to the top, then vanished as climates cooled or warmed, seas advanced or retreated, and continents drifted apart. How secure was their dominance if a slow change in sea level or a chain of volcanic eruptions could erase them? Even the largest skull, the strongest bite, and the sharpest teeth could not resist chance. This long record in rock shows that the fossil record is not a silent gallery of isolated monsters. It is a moving story of power, adaptation, and extinction, written in bones scattered through layers of sand and mud. Predators forced herbivores to grow larger and tougher. In turn, giant prey demanded smarter, more specialized hunters. Again and again, the pattern reset. As the timeline approaches the late Cretaceous, another group waits in the wings: the Tyrannosaurs. How did these rising hunters turn a changing world into their advantage? And what finally allowed T-Rex to stand at the end of this long, dangerous line? As tyrannosaurs rise in the late Cretaceous, the story of ancient apex hunters is still filled with shadows. For all the powerful jaws and giant skeletons on display, some of the most important details remain hidden in the rock. The picture looks sharp from a distance, but up close, many pieces are missing. One major uncertainty is size itself. For predators such as Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, only a few partial skeletons exist, scattered bones that hint at giants but do not give exact measurements. Were the largest individuals truly longer than Tyrannosaurus rex, or only close rivals? Scientists have made careful estimates from hip bones, skull fragments, and isolated teeth. Yet a single more complete skeleton could change the record books overnight. Their behavior is even harder to see. There is evidence showing that some large predators may have hunted in groups, but clear proof is rare. Trackways that show several similar theropods moving together, or bone beds holding multiple individuals of the same species, suggest possible cooperation. Still, did Giganotosaurus work together to bring down the biggest sauropods, or did it simply gather around a carcass after the kill? How often did these giants actually attack the largest prey? And how often did they focus on the weak, the young, or the already dying? Spinosaurus raises some of the deepest questions. For many millions of years, its image was based on a few damaged fossils, and even today its posture and lifestyle are debated. Recent discoveries of dense limb bones and a tall, flexible tail suggest strong swimming abilities and a semi-aquatic way of life. Yet arguments continue over how well it could walk on land, how it held its spine and hips, and whether it spent most of its time in the water or along the riverbank, stalking both fish and land-dwelling dinosaurs. Behind these named predators lies an even larger unknown: the hunters that have not yet been found. The fossil record is incomplete, shaped by chance, erosion, and ancient environments that did not preserve bones well. It is possible that some of the most specialized or largest apex dinosaurs are still buried in desert rock, deep forests, or cliffs that have not yet been studied. A single new skull, lifted from sandstone, could reveal an animal with teeth sharper than Carcharodontosaurus, or a body longer than Spinosaurus. Each major discovery has already shown how fragile old assumptions can be. The modern image of Spinosaurus, with a powerful tail and partly aquatic habits, replaced an earlier, more land-based reconstruction. The recognition that Carcharodontosaurids spread across multiple continents changed ideas about how these killers moved through ancient ecosystems and played an important role in shaping them. If such revisions happened within a few decades, what might the next century reveal? Paleontology remains a living science, driven by new tools, fresh field work, and careful re-examination of forgotten fossils in museum drawers. The story of the most dangerous dinosaurs is still being written, bone by bone. As Tyrannosaurs step into the frame, another question rises: did T-Rex truly represent the final peak of predatory power? Or is there still an undiscovered chapter waiting in the rocks ahead? The story of the most dangerous dinosaurs is still being written, bone by bone. Yet behind every sharp tooth and massive skull lies a larger pattern. For millions of years, apex predators were not just monsters. They were engines that helped drive entire ecosystems. Their hunts, their kills, and even their deaths shaped the ancient environment in ways that scientists are only beginning to fully understand. In any complex ecosystem, top hunters sit at the peak of a living pyramid. Many millions of years ago, when Allosaurus stalked sauropods, or when Carcharodontosaurus sliced into giant herbivores, their attacks did more than remove the weak and the slow. By limiting certain prey, they changed how herds moved, where plants could grow, and how smaller animals found shelter. There is evidence showing that the presence of strong predators can increase overall biodiversity, because no single prey species is allowed to completely dominate the landscape. Scientists have drawn striking parallels between these ancient systems and modern ones. When wolves were removed from some forests, deer populations exploded, stripping young trees and reshaping rivers. When large sharks decline in the oceans, mid-level predators surge and entire food chains become unbalanced. Is it so different from the late Cretaceous, when the sudden disappearance of giant theropods left ecosystems in shock after the asteroid impact? In both worlds, the loss of apex hunters played an important role in destabilizing life from the top down. Fossils tell a quiet but powerful story about extinction and recovery. Broken bones, tooth-scarred armor, and layers of ash record not only individual hunts, but global disasters. Entire dynasties of predators, from the blade-toothed giants of Gondwana to early tyrannosauroids in Asia, rose to dominance and then vanished. Each collapse opened space for new hunters, but the rebuilding was slow and uneven. What does it mean for a planet when its most powerful regulators vanish almost overnight? There is also a humbling perspective hidden in these rocks. For most of Earth's history, humans did not exist. Worlds of unimaginable danger and scale unfolded with no witness, as massive predators tested their strong jaws, honed their senses, and adapted to changing climates. The sharp teeth of Giganotosaurus, the crushing bite of later tyrannosaurs, and the hooked claws of raptors all tell the same message. Life experiments over immense spans of time, with or without human presence. By learning how these ancient systems functioned and failed, scientists gain insight into both the resilience and the vulnerability of life on a changing planet. Some ecosystems bounced back after extinctions, but others never regained their former diversity. As the documentary turns toward modern wildlife, another question emerges. How might this deep history change the way humans look at living predators, at fragile habitats, and at their own brief place in Earth's long, powerful story? For many millions of years before Tyrannosaurus rex, danger in deep time took many different shapes. Some predators crushed, some sliced, some struck from the shadows or from beneath the water's surface, but all turned their ancient environments into arenas of risk and survival. In the late Jurassic, Allosaurus stalked broad valleys filled with long-necked giants. Its skull was light but strong, with sharp, backward curving teeth that left deep marks in sauropod bones. Scientists have found fossils of huge plant-eating dinosaurs scarred with healed bite wounds that match Allosaurus' jaws, evidence showing that this hunter regularly attacked prey far larger than itself and survived brutal encounters. Speed, repeated slashing bites, and a flexible, air-filled skeleton played an important role in this strategy. Far to the south, in later ages, other apex hunters refined a different style of killing. Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus were among one of the most imposing land predators that ever lived, with long, deep skulls and blade-like teeth, similar to those of a great white shark. Instead of crushing, these teeth sliced. Fossils from South America and North Africa reveal enormous herbivores with ribs and hip bones carved by long open wounds, suggesting attacks designed to bleed giants dry rather than break their skeletons in a single blow. In the river systems of Cretaceous North Africa, danger came from another direction entirely. Spinosaurus, with dense bones, short hind limbs, and a long, narrow snout, ruled the waterways. Its powerful tail and broad feet hint at a life spent swimming after giant fish and lunging from the shallows. Here, the deadliest strike was not a sprint across open ground, but an aquatic ambush erupting from murky channels where visibility was low and escape routes were few. At the same time, early tyrannosauroids in Asia and North America were quietly building the blueprint that would later lead to T-Rex. These smaller predators had strong hind limbs, increasingly robust skulls, and forward-facing eyes. There is evidence showing that their sense of smell and vision were already improving step by step as other giant carnivores dominated the top of the food chain. Long before the late Cretaceous, the foundations of bone-crushing power were being laid in more modest bodies. Taken together, these hunters show that ancient danger came in many forms: slicing blades, crushing jaws, stealthy pursuit, fast charges, and silent river ambushes. Each predator matched its teeth, bones, and senses to a particular environment, from dry floodplains to dense forests and wide, slow rivers. They lived and died in worlds completely separate from the present, yet their fossils still carry the marks of struggle, growth, and change. Across this documentary, the story has moved from a familiar T-Rex-centered image to a wider, richer dynasty of apex hunters. Case studies of individual dinosaurs, comparisons of skulls and claws, and reconstructions of lost climates have revealed how many different ways a predator could rule. Scientists have pieced together this picture, fragment by fragment, turning scattered bones into living behavior. So where does that leave the modern observer? After traveling through Jurassic valleys, Cretaceous floodplains, and ancient rivers, the age of predators no longer belongs to a single famous species. It becomes a shifting tapestry of hunters, each rising and falling as environments changed. In the next step of this journey, the focus turns outward, toward a global community that follows new discoveries, debates new evidence, and keeps these long-vanished giants present in human understanding. What other apex hunters still wait in the rocks, ready to change the story again? Long before any single fossil skull was given a famous nickname, the shadows of these predators stretched across entire continents. For millions of years, Peaceful plant eaters moved in huge herds, but powerful hunters stalked beside rivers, coastlines, and forests, turning each ancient environment into a landscape of risk. That same sense of patient danger can continue, quietly, beyond this story. In this series, each episode returns to those vanished worlds and stays with them. Future journeys will follow other predator lineages, from the strange, long-necked hunters of earlier Jurassic plains to the later tyrannosaurs that finally claimed the throne. Scientists have also uncovered evidence showing that giant marine reptiles and flying hunters ruled the seas and skies with the same ruthless efficiency. Following this channel keeps that path open, step by step, from shorelines filled with plesiosaurs to cliffs patrolled by enormous pterosaurs. Across these stories, certain hunters stand out as one of the most striking expressions of power. The blade-toothed Carcharodontosaurus slicing flesh rather than crushing bone. The massive Giganotosaurus pacing floodplains. The lighter Allosaurus weaving among sauropod legs. Which ancient apex predator in this episode left the strongest impression? Was it the semi-aquatic Spinosaurus with dense bones and a towering sail, or the bone-crushing relatives that came much later? Questions about how these animals hunted, communicated, and raised their young still remain open, and each question asked in the comments helps guide which mysteries are explored next. The story does not end on a screen. Museum halls preserve original fossils, from strong limb bones to delicate skulls, allowing a direct look at the real remains of these hunters. Carefully written books, detailed skeletal drawings, and scientific articles present the latest evidence showing that ideas about behavior, growth, and senses are still changing. Visiting these spaces or exploring recommended resources linked with each episode played an important role in turning distant names into living, three-dimensional animals in the mind. Every like, comment, and shared episode acts as a small signal that careful, evidence-based storytelling about deep time matters. It supports the long, patient work of animating bones, reconstructing muscles, testing bite forces, and comparing footprints, so that each new chapter can move from deserts and badlands back into view. Engagement becomes more than a quick reaction. It becomes part of the chain that connects field discoveries, scientists, and those who imagine these worlds many millions of years later. In the end, the scale of time remains humbling. Long before humans, before T-Rex, these giant predators ruled their ecosystems, shaped the flow of life, and disappeared. Their teeth, claws, and trackways are all that remain, yet their stories still travel. By staying in the shadows of these giants, watching, learning, and returning for the next hunt in this series, their lost worlds remain active in human imagination, alive again each time the tale continues.